In a buzzing medieval town packed with adventurers, Red Dixon strides through the streets, watching a black-haired young man walk proudly as a member of the C-rank guild, the Black Wolves. At 25, they slam the door on the royal capital and vanish to a new city to chase their dream as an adventurer. Now he's 30, stuck at rank F for 5 brutal years, and a merchant finally offers him fresh vegetables. But the catch is, he's gotta run. He's barely strong in a fight, so he just stares off, thinking hard. Then, out of nowhere, he spots something. A little girl crumpled to the ground and sobbed as her knees screamed in pain, and 2 kids snapped around at her, calling her out for dragging herself along like always. Then, noticing she'd just fallen, they told her to stay put and wait for help, promising they'd be back in a flash. The boy scratched his head, then noticed the girl had collapsed, so he sprinted over, dropped to the ground, and asked politely if he could check her knees. Tears shimmered in the girl's eyes as she stared at her uncle in shock, then nodded and agreed. The young man pressed his hand to her knees and poured on recovery, and the girl gasped, then broke into a bright smile as she realized it didn't hurt at all anymore. The young man pressed a finger to his lips, flashed a grin, winked at her, and whispered that she better not tell a soul. Then the happy girl nodded all in. The boy wields a rare mix of skills and restoration magic, and as her uncle heads out, the grateful girl tells him thanks from the bottom of her heart, then waves him off with a smile. Strolling down the street past everyone else, he yanks the little bag off his belt, cracks it open, and pulls out a bottle because he's about to get himself a drink. He's stuck in his head, wondering why Jill just dragged him to a bar with no word to Aisha, thinking she's about to spill something about the guild's next promotion to rank B. Then he keeps marching down the street. After a while, the protagonist finally crosses paths with a young man named Jill, the Black Wolves Guild's leader, who's posted up at the bar, grinning, and softly asks Red if he can stop working for them. Gil's smile vanishes and he fires back, confused and stunned by this Red surprise. Then, acting polite so he won't seem rude, he jabs a finger at the young guy in front of him and declares he's fired. Rita shoots up and demands Gil explain how this could have happened so fast. Then he smirks and tells her it wasn't that sudden, because the Jet Black Wolves Guild could climb from C rank to B rank. The young man fires off the question again, double-checking if he really heard it right, and then he can't wrap his head around what's happening. The guild leader tells him to decide for himself, because he can't lug ballast around forever, not when it keeps yanking him down. Red snaps back, asking if he won't even act like an assistant. Jill snaps, she slams her mug down in pure rage, and her drink splashes everywhere. He glares at the guy, demands to know if he gets it, how they've been leveling up since they were kids, since they hit 20 just like him, then snaps that there's no rank for help, so the guy should quit talking and leave in silence. And just like that, everything they handed him gets yanked right back. Red's jaw drops, because Jill tells him that once you level up to a new rank, old B-rank guilds pass gear to rookies, and he's not allowed to take it just to turn it around and start a challenge. Rita begs for a moment, snapping that if he waits, he won't be able to do a thing as a hero. Then he glares at Jill. Jill grins wide and fires back, "What hero?" With a grimace, he snaps that he'll never turn into one of them, then tells the guy to run home and get back to farming. Rita shoots up from his seat, reeling at the news, then slams his palm hard on the table. After that, he grips his chest and exhales like the air being ripped out of him. And he said goodbye to Gil, only for Gil to hit him back with a scorching remark about how useless Red was. As the guy walks out, the guild leader, no longer his, keeps chugging with a grin and swears that without him, they'll guarantee *B rank. To Gil's loud laughter, words of thanks for the visit, and the bar workers promise they'll see him again, the dejected young man finally trudges out. Red shuffles alone through the night streets of the city, looking utterly crushed. At the meeting, the girl spots him instantly and blurts his name, and the guy's shocked out of his wits when Linda shows up. Then their eyes lock. Linda's eyes widen when she reads what his girlfriend wrote, and she blurts out in shock, "Wait, did you quit the adventure like a guild?" They stand right in the middle of the street, and Linda snaps to the young man that he's done. No more adventuring, no more earning money, because he gave consent, and the moment he does, her expression shifts. She leans in, stares him down, and tells him she doesn't need him anymore, then hits him with the words, "We're breaking up." He blurts out, shocked, "How are we supposed to break up again?" And she shakes her head, then rips into him with a savage insult. She tells him straight up that if he's broke, she won't even look his way. Dating him is just a waste of her time. Then she flicks her hair back like he's already done. He stares at her, baffled, and snaps that she never used to talk like this, because he's done everything for her, so he wants to know if she's only staying with him for the money. Linda smirks and says it's just how it goes. Only rich men get to stand beside a woman that beautiful. Then Rita blurts that he wanted to help, because she still owed money to her parents. She burst out laughing, pushed him to admit it again, and then dropped the bombshell that she hadn't seen her parents in years. The stunned young man finally snapped. He realized the girl had lied to him, and he demanded to know why she'd played him like that. Linda strode up to the guy, locked eyes with him, and fired back that this was all about the money. Then she spun around, waved at Red like a star signing off, and said goodbye because, she had a date, and the still stunned young man blurted out, "So who are you going out with?" With that usual smile, she snapped back that the kind of man who actually has money, unlike the other guy, can also be an adventurer, and Red tried to stop her, but she never even turned around as she told him to quit talking to her. He stayed right where he was, still calling out to her, but she was already walking away, so he spun around, crushed and defeated, and left too. It's a brand new morning, sun blazing overhead as birds streak past Red's window, and he's still sprawled on his bed. Empty bottles litter the floor, clinking into each other, and the leftovers are spilled there too. He snapped his eyes open, wondering if the sun had risen yet. Then he sat up on the edge of the bed, gripped his throbbing head, spotted the bottles of sock, and suddenly everything from yesterday came crashing back. Gil, the former guild leader, and Linda, his ex-girlfriend, flash into his view, grinning like they're mocking him. Yet somehow he still flashes a grin back, stunned that he can laugh at all in the middle of it. He shot up, slapped his own cheeks hard, yanked off his shirt, and headed for the shower to clean up. Then he was ready to hunt for a brand new job. The Royal Capital's Adventurer Guild headquarters rang with quiet bustle as the hero slipped into his healer's outfit, ready to rush in and snag a job he could actually handle. Red gets spooked, and then a worker sneaks up from behind to say, "We've been waiting for you," flashing a smile. The boy whips around and spots Sierra, and when Sierra grins, she ushers him through the back door, then asks politely for his story. The boy nods and agrees. Sierra, one of the Royal Capital Adventurers Guild staff, sat at the table, still stunned. Then she shook her head and demanded answers about how someone could mess up that gel so badly, reading out a shocking message right after. She's convinced Jill is dead wrong, swears their guild will take Red in, and even promises to bump the Black Wolves Guild up to rank B. Then Red gets hit with yet another shock. Seer breaks it down. Red stays humble, can cast recovery magic, and he's got a whole bag stocked with items. The guy shrugs it off and fires back, asking if recovery magic isn't supposed to be enough, then explains his bag is only for hauling luggage, while a seething, frustrated Sierra slumps under the weight of her own size, head dropping hard. She gets the full picture and tells Rita she really just wanted to be kind, and she apologizes for how badly he got treated. But when she looks at him, she can't help saying it anyway. Both the restoration magic and that bag of items are freakin' rare. A worker swears that without the troublemaking Black Wolves Guild, the adventurer's rank would have shot way higher. Then Ridu waves it off, calling it total nonsense. Sierra snaps out of her composure, leaps up, and tells the boy straight to his face that he doesn't value himself at all. Then, the modest kid fires back that he's only here at the guild today to land a brand new job. Sierra freezes in shock, blurts out an apology for worrying, then lays everything they've got on the table. When the worker slaps down the ads and points straight at the squads hunting for a healer, he sets them right in front of the guy. He scans the finished form and it screams the truth. Count Rodenwald from Amorta is hunting for immigrants. Shocked, he grabs the worker and asks what's going on, and she blurts out an apology, saying it was supposed to be an ad for recruiting new immigrants, but they mixed it all up again. Red stares out at thoughts of Amorta, right there not far from the royal capital, and admits it. He ditched his home and carved out a brand new life in the royal capital. Then, shock hitting Sierra, he blurts that he's heading for Amert, jabbing his finger at the announcement like it just dared him. Night falls and a camp lights up outside the city, crackling fire and all, while a young man lounges on a huge boulder in front of it. Retta leans in, insisting the night still bites hard, even with spring creeping closer, as he takes slow sips of his hot drink. He remembers how Sarah threw everything she had at his side. She wrote him a letter of recommendation for the Amerta Guild, pulled strings with her friend in the city's guild, and even arranged for Amerta to escort him halfway. Rita slid his hand into the item bag and decided tonight was the night. He'd cook up a juicy, fatty piece of beef for dinner. He grins and thinks, with this bag, this raw meat won't spoil on the road. Then he stares at it like it's safe. And right after that, he pulls out butter, milk, vegetables, salt, pepper, and bread, nodding like, that's everything. He shoved the frying pan over the flames and started frying raw meat, while the night's starry sky blazed above, and an owl's hoots cut through the air. A young man blurts out, stunned, what else is there? And then he spots a girl cowering behind a rock, looks her way and demands, who's there? Before urging her to come out. She clutched her chest with shaking hands, slipped barefoot over the cold stones, and stared out. Her presence alone made the whole place feel red, like it had just been surprised by her. Beneath the moon's cold glow, the girl stared out with dead, lifeless eyes, so dirty and ragged her clothes barely held together. Rita snapped the bag shut, then froze when she spotted the girl in rags. What was she doing here? Is anyone else around? Mom, Dad, she demanded, and the girl shook her head hard no. The young man stared like he couldn't believe his eyes. How could a little child stand out here in the wild? He demanded again, are you hungry? Do you want to eat with your uncle? But the girl stayed completely silent. Red flashed a smile and waved her over, calling, come on, asking if she was cold, telling her he was lonely all by himself, and begging her to join him for dinner. The girl stared at the boy, fear squeezing her chest, while her stomach rumbled, and beneath that gorgeous starry sky, she finally edged closer to Red as camp waited. Wrapped in the cloak the young man handed her, the girl huddled close to the crackling fire and ate in silence, while he kept cooking, sizzling meat in a frying pan, busy with the thought that she had to be starving. After she finished eating, her stomach still growled loud enough to catch the guy's eye, then boom, their gazes locked. Red flashed a grin, shoved a piece of meat into her hand, and told her she could have more because this was all left for her. She stared back, spoon already loaded with food. Soon the cups of food went empty, and someone set them aside, and the girl fumbled out an awkward thank you while the young man answered with a big, warm you're welcome. Rida, still chewing on the night's meal, nervously introduced himself to the girl, blurted that he was basically an adventurer, then slid into the seat right in front of her. The girl told him, I'm Mina, locking eyes with him as she slid into the seat beside him, clutching the gifted cloak in her hands while her gaze sparked to life. The boy asked if she had a home or somewhere she could run to, and Mina just shook her head. Then the boy shut his eyes, rubbed his chin like he was thinking hard, opened them, and told the girl she could come with him. Rita tossed a log into the fire, then told him he'd head straight for the city of Amort, and that he'd stop at a tiny town along the way. The girl hesitated and asked if it was really happening, and he answered with a confident smile. He stared at her bruised, scratched legs and asked if they hurt, then blurted out that he could heal them if he touched them. Mina caught on right away and said he had no medicine. He dropped to his knees, grabbed her legs, grinned and joked that he didn't need them anyway. Then he turned the healing on, bathing the girl's injuries in the same bright restoration glow her legs had just awakened. Mina stared at her legs, grinning because it didn't hurt anymore. Then she snapped her thanks to the guy, only to blank on his name until Rida nudged her with a smile. She beamed with pure joy, repeating his words of gratitude word for word. Then he handed Mina tea, a cup of honey to chase away the cold, and soon they both fell asleep together in a tiny tent under one shared blanket. The next day, wooden cart wheels rattled hard as Mina grinned. She was happy she'd met Red, and he shot back that he was even happier. Then the driver leaned to the boy and announced, a village is right up ahead. From a hilltop you can stare down at the whole village, wide streets, wooden houses everywhere, and that place is called Moralia. Right when they reached the village tavern, Red and Mina thanked them for guiding them on their way, and the villagers sent back warm good wishes. Outside the tavern, an old man burst into laughter and asked what could possibly have brought the father and daughter all the way to this godforsaken city. The old man leans in and names himself, Raz Moralia, the mayor of this tiny town, and the boy snaps back with his own name. He says they're only staying for a few days, and he won't let the old man's kindness hang over him just because he shakes his hand, and Raz nods like, fair. The mayor clocks the girl's grime the moment he spots her dirty feet tangled in her hair, and straight up asks if she accidentally splashed through a puddle. Then he tells them, no matter what, you can take a bath at the hotel, and you can grab clothes and shoes at the shop down the road. The hotel is his daughter's, the store belongs to her grandmother, and the young man blurts out his thanks for her kindness. The old man winked, burst into laughter, and told me that even though the town was tiny, everyone here was kind, the food tasted incredible, and we could always kick back and rest whenever we needed. After a while, the mayor's daughter finally catches up to them while she's cleaning, and she beams, welcome to the Sparrow Feathers Hotel. Rita and Mina immediately say they want to stay the night. Then the owner spots the girl and snaps, yeah, first you'll need to take a bath. The mayor's daughter swings open the shoe cabinet, pointing them to room 201 on the second floor, then promises a meal with their stay for just 2 silver coins. She snatches up the boots and strides toward the visitors, hands the red boots and snaps, you can't roam around barefoot, got it. Then she grins and says she'll lend him the shoes after his bath, and they'll hit the store together with their daughter. Retta and a scared timid Mina thank the girl, and once Mina hops down from Retta's shoulders, Retta turns to her and asks if she'll go take a bath. She nods and agrees. Then Rita lifts her chin, cranes her eyes down at Mina, and asks if she can bathe alone. Mina snaps her gaze aside and blurts out, mortified, she's not some little kid anymore. The girl slipped into the bathroom, stripped off her clothes, and neatly tucked every piece into a basket sitting in the cabinet. Then the girl swung the door open and slipped straight into the bath, grinning so hard as she blurted out that she hadn't had a bath in ages. Mina sank into the bath, scrubbed her own back with a brush, then blasted herself with cold water and finally slipped into the warm soak. She stared at her hand, her mind racing with father and daughter, and the thought embarrassed her so badly it lit her up inside. Fresh out of the bath, she told Rada she'd washed up while he sat there at the table, nursing hot tea. She blurted an apology for being a burden, but Rada waved it off, said he was fine, and even offered to run out and grab her new clothes and shoes. The innkeeper sends them off with a wish for a safe journey, then nudges Mina to tell him to get her the most beautiful clothes. Mina blushes and asks again from the doorway, embarrassed, but Ridu just waves her off and declares they're out the door. After a while, they finally hit the store, and Grandma lit up when she greeted them. Red chimed in right away and said he wanted to grab clothes and shoes, while Grandma took one look and clocked the adventurer, the parent, and the daughter. The saleswoman jolts at the filthy rags the poor girl is stuck in, and she blurts out, "Do you have any spare clothes?" But Renaf freezes with an awkward no, while Mina cowers behind him like she's trying to disappear. The grandmother barreled up to the clothes in the display windows and demanded, "Just a minute," because she was hunting for something perfect for herself. After grabbing the items, she rushes over, holds them up, and explains that the dress is cut from one single piece of fabric, perfect for travel, pure comfort. Then she grins and invites them to watch as she tries it on. Mina grabbed her stuff and sprinted into the fitting room, and while Grandma waited for her to disappear, she pushed Rada for answers, only for him to shake his head and say he was praying someone in this town would actually know the girl. The saleswoman swears she's never seen this girl around here, even though this town is so small everyone recognizes everyone's face, and the guy nods along like, yeah, that makes sense. After adjusting, Mina peeks out from behind the fitting room curtain and calls him over, then steps out and shyly asks, "So, how do I look?" Red gets shoved by his grandmother, who insists she's gorgeous and that the outfit fits her perfectly. Vina beams with joy. The guy spots her and thinks she's adorable, totally shocked that things end up going this far. With a dazzling grin, Mina's grandmother leans in and asks what she wants to try on next, and Mina, shocked, asks again, while the saleswoman steps in to explain that she's a traveler, so one outfit just won't cut it. Rita beamed and patted the girl's head, then told his grandmother to pick something Mina would truly love. She grabbed a fresh outfit and rushed into the dressing room, then burst back out blushing, turning to him with hopeful eyes and asking how it looked, and Grandma just smiled and said it fit her perfectly. After Mina changed again, she whirled in front of Red and her grandmother, throwing out questions about her fresh new outfit, and the guy lit up, calling it wonderful. Then both he and her grandmother grinned and pitched the next look, leaving Mina absolutely stunned. The happy grandmother grinned and promised she'd pick out another pair, then pointed to a fresh set in front of him. "Red, here you go. Thank you." After what felt like forever, night finally rolled in. Mina and Rada were heading home after shopping, and Rada immediately offered to carry her bags, but Mina snapped her head left and refused. She blushed, clutching the bag of stuff in her arms, and glanced at the guy before snapping her attention to Rita. Then Rita stared back as he shot, "What's wrong?" Mina beamed and sincerely thanked them for the clothes, swearing she'd treasure every piece, and a joyful Retta wished her great health, then promised that once they got back to the hotel, dinner would be waiting. They finally rolled up to a giant house with a big hotel sign, took their seats at the table, and dug in, thanking the moment the food hit. That cheerful girl bragged that the steak was amazing, and Red chimed in that he'd heard demon pigs were a local delicacy, so this was the first time he'd ever tasted meat like that. The innkeeper smiled and said, "Yep, that's our specialty." After she cleared their empty plates onto a tray, she whipped around to face the heroes and declared that their demon pigs were the finest in the whole city. With the dishes shoved behind the counter, the hotel owner told him they'd been getting trouble lately. Then, as street noise blasted in, he snapped his head toward the exit. The hotel owner snapped to attention, yanked the bandage from her hair, and bolted for the exit, yelling that she was going to check what was happening out there. Red shot out of his seat and bolted for the exit, desperate to see what was happening on the street. Then he peered outside and froze in shock. He stared at the heaps of injured people, there a frail grandmother and the city's mayor, while he promised, shouting that he'd grab potions from the warehouse, and a girl begged the wounded, "Hang on." As Red storms out of the hotel, he whips his gaze around and spots countless people getting hurt. Mina gasps, "What happened to them?" And the residents rush in to help the injured. The wounded villagers sprawled on those carts are handed painkillers and slapped with red notices, and you can tell some of them are in truly terrible shape. He slaps on his gloves, strides up to the wounded, and declares, "I'm a healer." Then he locks in their eyes and promises he can cast a tiny restorative spell to get them back on their feet. The mayor's daughter freezes in shock and stares at him as he orders Mina to stay at the hotel. then she bolts after him, shouting that she's coming too. Redo strides up to the innkeeper and promises he'll help the seriously wounded. She then points to the cart and tells him, "You're right there." He rushes up to a cart where a man lies in grave condition, and beside him a grandmother shakes her head and says they can't save him, because Red's restorative magic won't fix this one since his abdominal cavity is torn wide open. He presses his hand to the man's stomach and blurts out, fired up and sure that he'll go for it, using the restoration. Mina rushes up to her grandmother and blurts, "What happened to that man?" She's carrying medicine, painkillers and disinfectants, ready to help, but the grandmother just stares back, like she can't believe Mina's even asking. Then he blurts out that a pack of demon wolves ambushed them out of nowhere, and even tore into their demon pigs, so Mina rushes the medicine to her grandmother. The wolf demon nearly crushed him, and when the man finally snapped back to his senses, he rasped that he just wanted to get rid of it, until it attacked again. He begged for help, and Rita couldn't believe he was lucid, so she immediately told him to stop talking. A panicked Red fretted that he'd never seal the wound, so he forced himself to master advanced recovery magic for moments like that. He gritted his teeth and swore, "I failed the first time, so I'm going again and again until it works." Then he spammed the restoration spell, 3 tries in a row, until he finally pulled it off. He jerked in surprise and blurted that the pain was gone, then yanked off the bandage and stared at his stomach. "Look, my wound's healed." The grandmother shot him a stunned look, trying to figure out how he could heal injuries that bad, while a worn-out Rita stood there in front of the thankful man. He whipped around to the saleswoman, blurted that it was elementary restoration magic, then shot a wind of purification spell from his hands and demanded, right on the spot, who came next. A villager shouted him over, claiming 4 people were badly wounded, and beside him a grandmother begged him to help her son. Mina crossed her arms and prayed for Red luck. He flashed her a wave, and then sprinted to the other injured. After wrestling with it for a while and trying the restoration again, he finally declared it was the last one, gripping the man's crippled hand like his final chance. The man jerked his hand right away, checking every inch for new pain, and bowed to Red over and over, thanking him like crazy, while the exhausted Red kept wiping sweat off his brow, until the mayor of the city finally shouted his name. He turned around, and there they were, villagers bowing at his feet in pure gratitude, while the mayor practically begged him to believe he couldn't possibly thank him enough for saving the young men of their village. Stunned, Red shot his hands up and told them to lift their heads too, because he was finally doing exactly what he was supposed to. The mayor strode up to the boy, apologized that the city's treasury was down to just 500 silver coins, and insisted it had to be enough for Red, who blinked in shock because this was only basic first aid, and he refused to accept that kind of money. The mayor snapped, asking if the guy was joking, because even if it was just first aid, with that many wounded, he would have personally demanded a price of 2,000 silver coins for a job like that. Red was completely stunned, and grandmother's saleswoman leaned in and guessed he might be a priest or a healer, then grilled him about how much they charge for treatment. He scratched the back of his head, said he usually patched up small injuries, and didn't care about the cost at all. Then Mina wrapped her arms around him with a bright smile. The innkeeper flat out warned that only a handful of people could even touch recovery magic, so it was basically unheard of, and then hit him with the truth. Healing with magic costs several times more than potions. The mayor snapped his head side to side and flat out refused, especially when it came to saving a dying person, so I asked, if Retta was gonna be their priest and healer, what price would they pay? Grandma swore that even with just basic recovery magic, adventurers would swarm his guild, invite the second they heard, leaving Red completely blindsided. The boy finally got what Sira meant, and he blurted out that he'd just agreed to cover tonight's lodging, but the villagers shook their heads, insisting that paying for it wouldn't stop them from thanking him. Mina yanked on Red's sleeve, locked eyes with him, and promised they'd come back to pay for the night. Then the mayor stared at them and finally understood. Then he promised them that every time the two of them came to Moralia, food and lodging would be completely free. A joyful, sharp grin from the joke's mean spirit slid across her face and praised Red, catching him totally off guard. He told them this was a massive reward for him, then leaned in and asked if they could take a hike tomorrow, just to go after those demon wolves. After weighing it all, the mayor finally snapped that it was worth the trip. If they went, they'd slaughter every last cow and those demon pigs, then surge on the city. He wasn't about to let that happen. Retta told the mayor he'd tag along with them, and the mayor blinked in shock, asking if the boy was really sure. Then Retta said Mina and he were headed to a mart, so he wouldn't let her lose control and attack them on the way, while gently stroking her hair. Retta insisted this adventure wouldn't slow him down at all, and even though he barely ever uses it, he still managed to pick up some attack magic along the way. The mayor grinned and promised that one shot of restoration magic was all it would take to make everyone feel safe. And then Rita and the mayor sealed it with a handshake, both of them beaming because they'd finally met. After what felt like ages, he finally made it back to his hotel room, stretched hard, and admitted he was wiped out. Then Mina, proud of how well she'd pushed herself today, gushed that the bath worked wonders and told Rida thanks for everything. She burrowed into bed under the blanket, then called out to Red, right as the guy turned and asked what was wrong. She yanked the blanket over her face and whispered, "You were cool today." Rida, totally mortified, blushed hard, shoved a hand behind his head, and thanked Mina. Then he marched up to the glowing sphere, pressed his hand to it, and told the girl it was officially bedtime. After he snuffed out the glowing sphere, the boy called out good night, and the girl answered with sweet dreams. Then they slipped into bed. The very next morning, a bunch of young guys with weapons swarmed the street, talking in whispers as birdsong filled the air. As the assembled Reds marched out and greeted everyone, they ordered him to take charge, so he snapped back, saying the demonic wolves had to be wiped out, and everyone immediately nodded in agreement. Just outside the city, the squad got jumped by demonic wolves, and every warrior snapped into formation, circling the carts as they fought for their lives. Then the magician girl, bleeding and badly hurt, cried sorry, admitting her right leg was totally paralyzed, and as the guy spun around, he saw Fifa's wound for himself. He rips into the warrior with a curse and demands why demonic wolves prowl near this town. Then he bellows for everyone to protect the employer and his carriage. Faith wrapped her bleeding leg and even ripped off her own bandage to stop the blood, while the archer on the cart swore that the fur was so tough arrows couldn't pierce it at all, and the swordsman warned that if this keeps going, everything's going to end in disaster. He whips around to the wounded girl and demands to know if she can use her magic now. With ragged breaths, Fifa swears she still can, and calls out to the spirit of fire clinging to her staff and spellbook. Then he whirls his staff and hurls a firebolt spell, summoning raging flame to torch his enemies down to ashes. The demon wolf took several brutal hits, until one strike slammed into its eye, but it still didn't drop dead. Fafen slams the brakes and realizes one shot won't finish him, then whips back around to face the spirit of fire again. The wolf, seething with rage at the girl, barreled past the warrior and lunged at her, shocking the swordsman, and Fifa, caught mid-spell, backed away in pure terror. Right then, Red shoulder checks the wolf and slams the attack dead in its tracks, right as it was about to strike the sorceress. The wolf crumples to the ground nearby, and the swordsman yells, "Good job," as he swings his blade. He drives it straight into the immobilized demon wolf and drops it dead. Then Red, clutching his shoulder, whips around as the other warriors cheer like crazy, pumping him on as Captain Riggs plunges the sword too. Captain Riggs hypes the inspired guys to wipe out the last demonic wolves, and they jump on board without hesitation. Red charged up to the wounded warrior, shot his hand out, and started healing him, then warned, "Even if I bring you back, that lost blood and strength won't come with it, so don't push yourself too far." Then the guy steps up to Faye, grins politely, and asks, softly but urgently, if he can take a look at her badly injured leg. The protagonist pressed the wound, and the girl screamed in sharp pain. Then he ripped out a restoration spell that eased it, and her eyes went wide as she felt the hurt fade away bit by bit. Then Reddit whips around to the captain and the others, demanding, "So you're adventurers." They nod and spill that they're escorting merchants from the royal capital. Then Mr. Eric, their employer, steps out of the carriage, stunned as he spots the Riggs. By then, Rita had already yanked her hands away from Faith's leg after finishing the healing, and Faith blinked in shock when she kicked her leg and realized it was healed that fast. Captain Riggs lifts his wounded hand and asks if he can help them too, and Retta nods, casting a restoration spell, telling him they're here to wipe out the wolves. Mr. Eric leaned out of the carriage window, thanked the protagonist, and fired up a talk about paying for the treatment. But Retta waved it off with a grin and said he'd taken care of everything for free, so there was nothing to pay. Even Riggs, still swinging his sword, tossed in a "thank you too." The captain snaps into action and barks orders. Feifa charges the wolves on the left of the carriage, while the city warriors wipe out the wolf on the right, and with a battle cry roaring through the air, they surge forward straight at the pair. With a battle cry, they close in and cut down the wolves one by one, smashing forward with swords, firing bows, and swinging halberds. The warrior camped beside Redis leans in and growls, "Keep it up like this. If the hero keeps using restoration on the wounded, we'll smash every last member of their pack." Worried, he whips toward the forest and yells for everyone to wait. Then the others stare straight at a massive black shape looming between the trees as he snaps, "Something's coming." A monstrous demonic wolf with a jagged scar on its face suddenly looms before the town's warriors, then stalks forward at a slow, terrifying pace. Stunned out of their minds, the boys stare at him, blurting, "What is that?" and when they clock his massive size, they instantly assume he's the leader of the pack. With one sharp flick of his tail, he blasted a warrior through the air, shattered his spear on impact, and sent the rest tumbling out of his way. The pack leader strides toward the cart, eyes blazing, and then spots the other demon wolves sprawled dead on the ground. The warrior tells Red to watch him, and Red nods along, because that demonic wolf is absolutely the pack's leader. The alpha demonic wolf leader throws his jaws wide and unleashes a savage howl that sends every warrior panicking. Yet Captain Riggs and FIFA don't freeze. They draw their weapons and move in. The girl shrieks that he's charging straight for them, and every warrior braces in place, waiting to see what he'll do next. One fighter steps in front of Rita and declares that, yeah, he's not the most trustworthy, but he'll still shield the main character. Rita yanks out a spellbook and growls that it's all over, then adds that he's got to move now. He shuts his eyes, summons the spirit of fire, and commands it to scorch the enemy down to ashes, while the warrior snaps his head over his shoulder in shock. Retta jabs her hand forward, yells the spell, and unleashes a storm of firebolts straight into the wolf pack's leader. Seeing the result, the protagonist erupts in disbelief. He did stop the wolf. Then he slams straight back into his fire spear spell, skewering the foes and torching them into ash. Fiery spears ripped straight through the wolf from head to toe, and it jerked off the ground like all its strength vanished at once. The fallen leader of the pack crumpled to the ground, lifeless, while the spears vanished before the armed warrior's eyes. FIFA blurts out, stunned, "What was that?" while Captain Riggs gapes, then demands, "Tell me it was the original fire magic, because it's that powerful." The warrior who stood up to shield Red drops his sword and tells him, flat out, how insane his magic is, and admits it's the first time he's ever seen something like that. Red shrugs like it's no big deal, saying that even with an F rank, he's still an adventurer magician. Captain Riggs roars for everyone to keep their guard up. Sure, the leader's gone, but those demon wolves are still out there. Fiva blurts, "What about the rest of the pack?" Rada snaps back, "Then I'm going too," and orders, "Just watch the carriage for me while we fight." Morelia's village, Amina, wears a cleaning lady disguised with a mop in hand, perched at the hotel table, staring blankly while one thought burns. Rada still hasn't come back. At the table, her grandmother pours tea and tells the girl to stop worrying. Her dad will come back safe any moment. Then the innkeeper calls out, and when the woman turns, it's her mom. She grabs Mina and shouts that the younger kids from Rada have returned. Mina bursts out of the hotel, spots the mayor lounging nearby, then catches the kids cheering over their win and the merchant carts rolling in, yet her gaze snaps to only the red up. When Rada's right there, safe and sound, the happy girl breaks into a satisfied smile, pure relief flooding her. Right then, Rada spots her in the crowd of townspeople. Nina sprinted toward him as Red threw his arms wide, and she leaped straight into his embrace, laughing with pure joy that he was back. Night fell and the town roared with celebration. People piled up a blazing fire and threw a huge banquet to honor their victory over that pack of wolves. Retta sits there with a mug in hand, grinning as he says there's nothing like savoring ale after work, and Mina looks like she's loving it too, because she's dancing with the innkeeper, smiling so bright it's contagious. The town's mayor strides up to Rada, grilling him about how he's enjoying the holiday and whether he's really having a good time. Then Rada grins and says the banquet is absolutely amazing. An old man drops into the seat beside him and says he wants to talk to Retta about tomorrow's trip to Amert. Right then, Mr. Eric, the employer from the rescued cart, closes in to greet Mayor Morelia and Red, and the mayor shoots back that the merchant couldn't have arrived at a better time. He blurts out that he messed up the introduction and reveals, "I'm Eric Roth from the Roth Company." Reddish shoots out a handshake, introduces himself as Retta Dixon, and beams, "Nice to meet you." Mr. Eric then thanks him for the help, especially for what happened with today's attack. Then he blurts out that it's all thanks to him. Every one of their companions is safe and fine, and even the potions didn't get touched. With that settled, they can finally keep trekking toward the goal without panic, and Rita can't help but say, "This is great." Mina starts dancing, and the merchant leans in asking the protagonist if he'll take his daughter with him to Amert. He even offers them a lift in his carriage to the city, and Rita lights up, saying that would be wonderful. Then Mina blurts, "Hey." He watches the girl clutch her grandmother's hand, and Mina pulls him in, inviting him to dance with them, while behind them the whole village keeps spinning to the beat. The innkeeper shoved Mina along from behind with one hand and yanked her by the other, barking for them to wait. Then he blurted that he can't dance. Mina grinned and told him, "Just dance the best you can," pushing him to hurry up. Mayor Morelia and Mr. Eric stood there waving at the boy as they called out, "See you tomorrow." Rida and Mina clasp hands and burst into a dance, moving with the crowd as the whole town sways to the music around them. They make music for them, drums pounding, lute and horns blaring, turning the whole place into a dance party that pulls everyone in. The main character marched forward, blurting 1, 2, 3 with every step, and Mina couldn't help bursting into laughter. Then it hit him. He was dancing like a bear, but he still kept going, grinning at the happy girl ahead. A tipsy young man slumps as he remembers his ex, Linda. Then his mood crashes harder. The innkeeper finally leans in, asking the hero what went wrong and why he looks so miserable, and Retta can't take being called a hero, so he blurts that he'd rather not be. Mina caught the scene and burst out laughing, and when the hero stared at her and asked what was so funny, she realized he had more on his mind than he let on. The girl snaps it into place. His face is flushed. That's why. And as he keeps his eyes on her, he can't stop wondering if it's really worth bringing Mina along, because in Morelia nobody knows her, and his whole trip ends at Amieta. Rita knows that doesn't mean the girl will track down her acquaintances in Amert, and in Morelia her circle of friends keeps growing. Then Rita locks eyes with her, calls her over, grabs her hand and promises, tomorrow, we're going to Amert. Mina beams with pure joy and says, it's good, and I can't wait. The young man relaxes into a smile too, tossing his doubts aside like they never stood a chance. He steps right up to her and warns that tomorrow's going to be brutal, then tells her to get some sleep right after this song, and she nods, agreeing without hesitation. Next morning, just before he left, he grabbed Mr. Erich's hand, thanked him, and Mr. Erich squeezed back, saying we've got to stick together when life gets brutal. The innkeeper and her mother rolled up to Mina with a basket full of cookies they'd baked together, pitching them as the perfect road trip snack, and Mina gratefully thanked them. The whole town, even the mayor, lined up to see Radar off, and they made it crystal clear, come back for sure because he'd always have a place here. Mr. Erich was already in the carriage when he shouted at the hero to hurry in. There was no time to drag out the goodbye, while the whole village gathered to send them off. Everyone screamed for them as they took off on their journey, come back, because the moment Retta and Mina returned, they'd be thrilled to see them again. The residents' kids shouted that they were waiting, and Retta and Mina waved goodbye as they rode out. After they blew past the city gates, Captain Riggs rode in the carriage with them, sighed hard, and admitted they were still too early. This group wasn't ready to take on the demonic wolves yet. Fifa beside him nodded like, yeah, you're right. He dropped his head and admitted that even with Rita's brutal recovery magic, he was still stuck as an F rank, while Fife stared in awe, saying the attack magic was just as incredible. Riggs hesitates because he and Fafa are stuck as F ranks, and he can't shake the fear that they'll never climb to E. Then Redia leans in and tells him they're still young, so he believes they'll make it, and with enough grit, C and B ranks won't stay a dream. The swordsman grins and says it'll be great if that's really true. Then the archer cuts in fast, yelling that things are spiraling out of control, and the leader's help is suddenly required. Captain Riggs leans in and tells Phaetho it's time to hit the job, no more waiting, and the mage girl nods, ready to go. They jump out of the cart and Mr. Eric warns, keep going like this and you'll hit Amart before evening. Red's jaw drops, wait, really? I heard the trip takes 2 whole days. The man tells him, take the old road and you'll hit that detour. You used to have to go around for everything. But now, the city's moving forward. New bridges go up, fresh roads get built, and suddenly getting around is way easier than it used to be. Surprise flares in Red's eyes when he realizes Amart's development is incredible. Mina leans in, hooked by the conversation, and stares back at Red. They hammer on toward the mountain, chasing the promise of good company, and Mina digs into a basket of mouthwatering cookies the innkeeper hands her. After a while, Reddit whips around to the cab driver, spots a massive wall, and blurts that she can see a city. Mr. Eric then asks if she means a Mert. They say loads of people are out there building the outer wall, and since the city's still brand new, there are barely any buildings, just stretches of bare earth and dirt roads everywhere. Mr. Eric insists the city is buzzing and bright, and Rita, deep in thought, shoots back that then there's work to be had here, plenty of it, even for someone who isn't exactly an adventure type. The man tells them they're almost there, and if he and Mina hit any trouble, they should call the Raha company without fear. He'll pay back every debt for the service for sure, and Rida blurts out questions about what's going on, shocked. Mr. Eric taps the crates and flat out says he's bringing up how they wiped out the demonic wolves, because now, with that threat gone, they can keep trading without a single worry. Send a thank you note for letting him ride in Mr. Eric's carriage, and if trouble pops up, you can reach her too. Then the guy finally catches on, Mina's gone silent, and when he looks over, he realizes she's fully fallen asleep on him. He leans back against her and breaks into a grin, joking that their conversation must have been so dull it knocked the poor girl out. Bursting out of the wagon, Rida throws out a heartfelt thanks, and the man grins and says they're headed straight for the merchant gate now, while Captain Riggs and FIFA wave the heroes off, urging them to team up again if fate ever brings them back together. Rita and Mina locked eyes, and the guy shoved an invitation at them to step into the mert. Then they grabbed each other's hands and rushed through the gate. Right in front of Red and Mina, a wide street sprawls out, lined with tall 2- and 3-story houses where crowds roam and carts rumble past, while the hero stares down at the map, clutching the girl's hand. After a stretch of travel, the protagonist finally barrels into the Amur branch of the Adventurers Guild, and the moment the heroes step in, Millet, one of the guild's employees, welcomes them with big smiles and asks what help they need. Red grins at the girl ahead and says he wants to move here and register with the guild. Then the employee asks again if they really mean to relocate, and with a polite nod, she waves them over to the far table. Across the room, Red and Mina get handed a form to fill out, and the guild will chase them down once it's done. So the hero snatches a pen, scribbles Red Dixon in the spot, then taps the paper to make sure the girl writes her name too. He shoots a quick look at the boy as he blanks the field for the girl beside him, then realizes she's reading Mina Dixon and just silently studies what he's doing. Rita shoots her an apology, saying she didn't want to get in the way and hoping the girl's okay. Then Mina dips her head, shakes it no, and grins like everything's fine, grateful even. Next field you've got to spell out why the move's happening. The hero steels himself, praying that the mean relatives show up. Then he writes the reason down and plans to grill the guild for answers later. He shoved his hand into the pouch at his belt, dug out a letter, and snapped, "This is a recommendation from the Royal Headquarters Guild." The worker grabbed it, then demanded, "Show me." Millet is stunned to discover the truth. This isn't a recommendation letter at all, and the red shock hits like a punch. Then she launches into it. This isn't some basic letter of recommendation. It's a real recommendation straight from Sarah. Mina freezes with worry and asks what's wrong, and the employee just smiles and says it's even better than a normal recommendation letter. Then he blurts out, "So the letter's real. Does Mr. Dixon really have healing magic?" Because he thinks he'll rake in guild money, and the reply snaps back, "Yes, but only restoration." The worker snaps to her feet and blurts that even basic healing magic, just restoration, has a value you can't put a price on, then begs to get her request processed ASAP, and Retta immediately questions what the request is. The hero politely shoots down the idea, asking them to hold on, because he doesn't even know where he'll crash with Mina tonight. But when Millet points out that the guild has an inn they partner with, the heroes finally get their answer. The employee assures them the guild will foot the bill for the inn, and they'll even hand over free access to the guild's grimoires, and Reddit can't thank them enough. Once the chaos settled, Millet leaned in and asked the hero, locking eyes with him, "So, do you accept our application in the end?" Reddit shoots her hand behind her head and insists it's just healing magic taking the potion's place, and the worker immediately relaxes, bows, and thanks her like that's all he needed. She slides a sealed letter into her hands and swears it's meant for the inn, and Rada takes it immediately, gratitude spilling across his face. Later that evening, the main crew finally rolls up to the hotel, and right there, Riggs Dahlen, the owner everyone calls the bearded dwarf, meets them at the door, with a girl standing beside him who steps forward and says her name is Milan. Red grabs Riggs' hand and reintroduces himself, then adds Mina beside him, admitting she's a little shy and hoping Milan and Mina will hit it off and become friends. The girls beamed, clasping hands tight as Mina and Milling traded greetings, Milling asking if Mina lived here and if they'd be friends, and Mina blushingly saying yes. The innkeeper blurts out that his daughter's got a crush on Red's kid, and they've been having the time of their lives. So Red awkwardly admits that Mina isn't his daughter at all, leaving Riggs completely stunned. Riggs Dahlen drops this bomb. Being an adventurer means anything can happen, but he refuses to spill the details, because if she's under Rita's protection, then who are we to argue? Then he blurts that the room is shared, and pushes for him to grab the free one instead. Red says, "That's all I've got, thanks for everything," and just like that, he's done with questions, while the bearded dwarf owner lights up and tells them, "Don't worry, I'll help you," then adds, "We're sharing the same roof now, so you treat us like family." Riggs told his daughter to take the guests to their rooms and make sure they didn't miss the bathroom and toilet. Then a smiling Maylene nodded like got it, and her father promised they'd all eat together later, so he urged her to jump in too. The innkeeper's daughter grabs Mina's hand and yanks her forward, urging her to come on, while Red and Riggs just stand there chatting to themselves. Milan, balancing a tray of food on her head, storms over to the table with a bright smile, laughing as she apologizes for the heavy load, and then announces that the pilaf, salad, and hearty meat soup are finally ready. She slides the plates onto the table, flops down beside Mina, and across from them a red mug just sits there, waiting like it's in on the secret. Then everyone finally arrives, they clink heads with bon appetit, and dig in with big, happy smiles. Mina takes a steaming spoonful of soup, and the moment she tastes it, she bursts out with, "Wow, it's so delicious." with a huge happy grin. Mealing cheers along, saying her dad's cooking is always amazing, and Mina can't stop smiling because it feels straight up magical to her. Red tore into his pilaf, praised it as perfectly fried, crispy, aromatic, and downright delicious, then admitted the one thing. Once it hit the grill, it leaned a little too salty for his taste. Even the other guests chime in, praising Mr. Riggs and swearing the gnomes are always the blacksmiths they're meant to be, while Reddy's grins and declares that with the right food and a sword, anything is possible. Malin pulls the guests in and tells them her father once forged swords. Then the moment her baby sister was born, he put down the steel and became a cook. Rita blurts that Malin's dad is awesome, then beams so bright you'd swear it's a fact that can't be argued. The heroes head back to their room, and the guy grins, saying the owner's daughter is nothing but pure sunshine. Mina nods and admits they've clicked a little already. The young man laughs that this is perfect, because they're going to be stuck here for a while. Then a soft knock hits the door, and they spin around to ask who it is, before Mailing slides in with a warm grin and ushers Mina to the bathroom. Mina and Milan step into a secret room together, and Mina jumps in, helping her brand new friend wash her hair. Then she pins her hair back and asks if the innkeeper's wife is around. Mailing just laughs it off, saying she still has a ton of fun tagging along with her father every single day. He stares at the heroine and blurts out that life gets weird, like, sometimes you don't just have guests, you've got problems with them. Then she pops out of nowhere, points at the next move her father makes, and strikes a heroic pose with a bright, confident smile. With her arms crossed tight over her chest, she tells him, "My friend's dad is just as great." Mina grins and says, "Retta really is kind, truly a good person." The girls clasp hands, kneel down, and cheer. She's praying their dads get along so perfectly they can bathe and wash clothes together. Rita feels awkward listening to the girls, so she slips in quietly that Melon's gone way too far. Next day, just outside the city limits, crews are chopping down the forest, and Red rushes to the wounded hand, slamming it with his restoration magic. The Amare adventurer stares in shock, then blurts that he's utterly amazed. Red just healed 3 people with serious wounds. Then he blurts that he's been wondering what kind of guy Red really is, and turns out Red's solid, because he's actually here to take on an assignment with a kid. The guy quickly apologizes, saying he only got to Amert yesterday, so he can't just leave her alone. Text reaches out, brushes the girl's hair, and grins as he praises her good father, calling her a proper young lady. Then Mina shoots back her thanks, thanking him as the adventurer's uncle. He drops a sad face and tells the young lady, "Take it easy, at least call me big brother," then cracks, "I'm only 40. The warriors nearby laugh and say, "That's not big brother, he's old enough to be uncle, even if he looks more like a grandfather." Then Tex slips an arm around the main character and shoots Mina a question. "So, you've got an uncle too, right?" Mina's caught off guard and she pauses, thinking it over. She flashed a smile and shot it down. "No, he's not an uncle, Rida is just Rida." Rida bursts into laughter and thanks the girl. After a while, the men stare at the protagonist, and when he doesn't get it, he blurts, "What do you want?" The adventurer smacks his back, right on the red spot, and says he'll leave the rest to him, and the protagonist finally gets it and turns to the text. Then he blurts out, "Wait, what do you want me to do?" And the guy grins, telling him to just try something with magic. Rita stared at the adventurers and told them to cut down trees in the forest, then demanded how they pictured it, and after he thought it over, he said it was worth a shot. Then Tech leaned in and told him, "Got ideas, go for it." The protagonist nodded in agreement, shot them a warning, "Don't you dare come near me," then spun around and fixed his gaze on the spirit of the wind. With pure focus, he willed those invisible blades to whirl and burst outward in every direction beneath him. Then he roared, wind that sliced through spells. Red snapped a spell and the trees slammed down in roaring chaos, chopped right at the base. Everyone froze in shock because Red admitted it was way more powerful than he expected. Mina, standing behind the rest, lit up and basically went, "He's seriously so cool." Tix, buzzing with excitement and pure shock, blurted out that he'd asked for help. He just never thought it would spiral this far. The other guys snapped into speech too, stunned by what they'd just seen, refusing to believe those were windblades straight out of the entry-level ranks, then pushing back hard. Reds were clearly a whole higher tier, and panicking that at this pace they'd get tossed from their jobs because with skills like that, they'd all rather trade places and become lumberjacks. Red awkwardly lifted his hand behind his head and muttered that he'd been on a roll lately. Then Text shot back, saying if magic scales with magical power, then with all that power, just how much magic does the hero actually have? Tex nodded and basically said, "All right, no more talk, we've got work to finish." Then he pointed at the heap of cut wood like, "Okay, what now?" He suggested loading it into a cart, and with around 30 of them working, he made it sound like the whole cutting job would wrap up way faster. Rita shot his hand forward and unleashed a binding chain spell. yanking every scrap of cut wood on the ground into tight knots. Then he whipped around to the others and blurted that he didn't just have anything, he had a special box for everything. The protagonist snapped on his storage magic and yanked every wooden chain into his belt bag, sending the forest's wood flying away until all that remained were brutal stumps. Everyone around them gasped all over again, and the adventurer's message hit hard. This young man was a true jack of all trades. Mina stood with everyone, staring at Red as he chatted with the others like it was pure sunshine, and she couldn't help thinking, what an amazing guy. She smiled, and suddenly she remembered how, when they first met, he scared her half to death, so she stayed on guard, but then, without warning, that fear melted away. She barely even said her name, yet somehow he still treated her with nothing but kindness. Rita had always cared for her with a kindness that never wavered. She was no ordinary healer at all. The men in front of her were roaring that they'd quit early, grab their gear, hitch the horses, and head straight home. The healer Minamit only talked cold cash, but Reddit still cared about the people he'd treated. Then the guy vowed he'd help the others and told Minam to wait. Mina flashed Red a bright smile, waved him off with a come back soon, and couldn't stop thinking how unbelievably lucky she was to have found a man like him. She knows he's been hunting down her past, asking Mrs. Millet at the guild and Mr. Riggs at the inn, and then she goes still, staring at the moon, replaying her family in her head, terrified of what happens when Frida finally finds out the truth. She pictures his gloomy face and fears the smile will vanish, that he'll think she's awful, that he'll walk out on her. But inside her chest, she screams, "No, I can't lose this." He waves at her with a grin, calls her home, right when everyone else has already piled in, and the horses are being hitched up to the carts. She smiles back, says she's already on her way, and you can tell she's choosing to stick with him, no matter what. After a while, they finally burst into the bustling city of Amerda, and right from above, a mysterious figure in a cloak and hood keeps a silent, watchful eye on them. Under the hood, you catch a girl's battered face, dirt smeared, scrapes all over. She grips her hood with one hand and glares down at the main characters from the rooftop. After a while on the new mission, two dead monsters slump on the ground, a broken cart lies wrecked, and wounded people groan nearby, while Ridas steps in, casting restoration magic to heal them. The healed warrior snaps upright, slaps his hand on the hero's shoulder, and then roars out thanks to Red Dixon for saving him, swearing he'd only heard about his restoration spell from his sister, until he saw it with his own eyes and realized she's unreal, because he genuinely thought he was about to die. Rida freezes in shock, trying to figure out which sister he means, and then he lifts her hand right up to his face. The man snaps his hands up to his eyes, pinches the air like it's glasses, and tells the hero to look. Rita instantly gets it. He's talking about Millet's employee from the Amert branch of the guild, and yeah, he really does look like his sister. Staring at the demon's lifeless body, the young man blurts that he never imagined something this huge could show up here. This place is only an hour from the city. Then the warrior adds that back then, he'd only been seeing small animals. Mina strides up to the talking boys and snaps that they saw demonic wolves in Morelia, so now all eyes are on her. She's buzzing with excitement, but it turns to nerves, so the warrior pauses to weigh her words. Then she blurts out, maybe the animals are fighting over territory. The crew scans the people around them, and Radab blurts out what they're supposed to do, only for the warrior to snap. We fix the cart, or we'll have to stay here for the night. Then we hit Amert in the morning. Rada promises Mina and him will be back before daylight, and the warrior warns them to be careful, then they clasp hands. After that, the protagonist and the girl head out, shouting their goodbyes to the whole group, since everyone else decides to stay the night. Rada and Mina strolled into town, fingers locked, letting the breeze brush their faces while leaves whispered and birds sang. Rada, still worn out from his errand, yawned, then Mina noticed, asked if he was okay, and wondered if he wanted to catch some sleep. Then she fires the question at him. So you were studying magic from the guild's Grim Wars while I was asleep yesterday. Rita shoots back. I nodded off before it got too late. I'm okay, everything's fine. And she can't help but smile as she adds, I'm grateful you worried about me. Suddenly the forest erupted with terrifying loud blasts. Birds scattered like sparks, and the heroes snapped to attention, while Mina demanded, what's causing that? Then she clocked it, thrust out her finger, and told Rada there was a tiny path right there, turning to him as she spoke. He nodded and decided to check it out, saying they'd only keep going if it was safe, and if danger showed up, they'd bail right away. Mina said she got it. As the heroes strode down the path, they stumbled on a trail of fallen monster bodies, and a strange cart tucked among the trees. He sprinted up to the crowd and demanded, are you all right? Then blurted that he was an adventurer from Amir. But the second he got a closer look, his eyes went wide. They weren't humans at all, they were elves, right near where regular people lived. The elf man yanked his bow up in a flash, notched an arrow, and roared at him to stop. then warned him not to come any closer. Rita shot his hands up, swore he wouldn't hurt a soul, and told him to hold up, because he fully expected elves hated humans, yet still couldn't believe they'd be so cautious he couldn't even picture it. Rita spots a wounded elf child nearby and blurts, "Are you okay?" But the archer snaps back, "Bow steady, that this is their fight, their mess, and they'll handle it themselves." The child sprawled across the elf's lap right there. Mina screamed that the kid was in agony, and Retta shot back that he could heal him with restoration magic. The man shoots back that he doesn't trust anyone, and Rita, still gripping her hands at her sides, begs them to believe he'll cure her if they finally let him examine the child. The elf beside her fights back tears and blurts that she's so relieved they're here to help, because that elf boy is already cursed with a poison the ruby tiger's fangs left behind, and no regular restoration magic will save him. Riddish realizes it. If that's poison, he can fire off a detox spell, and the elf's hope comes roaring back. She barrels straight to her husband, slams herself in front of him to stop him from firing, and begs the protagonist to heal her boy. Then the archer turns and calls her Edith, clearly not buying her plan. Edith spots the man choking up in tears, yells Klaus, and warns that if they do nothing, Kate, the child, could die, so they have to put their faith in the plan. Right then, red rockets past the bickering elves, and Klaus yanks his bow up again. Edith stays close and urges that this man should help, but Klaus won't stop aiming. Mina steps in front and shields Red. Mina throws herself in front, saying, "If he messes up, then let the elf shoot me, then we'll finally call it even." And the elf is stunned beyond words. Rida checked the elf, thanked the girl, and still couldn't shake the question of why she'd gone so recklessly. But then he chose to start with a detoxification spell on the elf boy sprawled on the ground. Red couldn't stop thinking how lucky he was to have learned the detox spell from the Grim Wars, and he vowed to keep hammering healing and restoration magic into every step of his training. That poor boy, racked by the ruby tiger's venom, lay beside Rida as Edith, tears streaming down her face, grabbed Klaus's attention and told him to check Keith's complexion, because it was finally turning better. Klaus shouted to the boy, dropped his bow, and Mina spun around with a surge of relief, like everything had finally worked. Cloud lowered his head until his hair brushed the ground, smelling the air as he bowed deeply to Red, apologizing through clenched regret, then thanking her from the heart for saving his son. He also said they didn't have a single coin to cover his treatment. Red Ash shook his head hard, flapped his hands at the elf, and told him not to fret, because he was just an adventurer who could heal with recovery magic. The hero yanks a sheet of paper from his bag and tells them, "If you really want to thank me, just bring the completed task to the Amida Adventurers Guild as payment for my help." Klaus read it and blinked, 5 silver coins. Edith grinned and told him it was even cheaper than the potion she'd just bought, while Mina added that with monsters crawling in more lately, potion prices had shot up. Rida blurted out, "Why do we have to track down people just to get this potion? The elves already have a miracle cure, and I heard it works way better than any regular potion." The elves shook their heads and told Red that the miracle cure was gone completely. Red demanded how that even happened. Klaus snapped that it was the dragon's fault. Red stared at them in shock, like the floor just disappeared under his feet. Klaus told them a black dragon had just shown up near their settlement and started tearing into them again and again. Then Edith said their warriors fought back and forced it off, but the wreckage was already too much. They burned through every last vial of miracle medicine, and now even the warriors are still writhing in the injuries they took. So if he strikes again, they'll have no choice but to abandon the village. Nina snapped her gaze to him, worry written all over her face, and Red soothed her by patting her head with a gentle smile. Then he turned to Klaus and asked, straight up, if he could tag along to the village, because he was sure his restoration magic could be a huge help there. Edith stared at the elf man, and Klaus snapped that in that case he'd be a huge help, so Red stepped forward and introduced himself. Then the elf promised he'd try to sway the whole village, begging for their help to heal the warriors. Keith blinked back into himself, felt the carriage sway under him, and realized his body didn't ache a bit, so he figured, no way, I must be dead, and snapped his eyes open. From her seat beside him, Mina clocked it immediately, and asked if he was okay. The elf boy almost couldn't believe it. Still rattled with worry, she started grilling him. Are you hurting at all? Is everything really okay? Keith nodded and smiled, and she finally let out a breath, clasped her hands in front of her and said she was happy for him. Keith's mind started racing, because the last thing he could remember was being with his mom and dad in the human city, watching them hide their ears while they bought a potion. And on the way back, a ruby tiger lunged at him, sank its teeth in, and slammed him to the ground under its brutal, heavy weight. And just like that, he spots an angel standing right in front of him, handing him a towel, while some random guy sits beside her. But honestly, who cares? Even his parents notice the moment the boy wakes up. He jerked up, grabbed a towel, pressed it to his forehead, and started talking. Then Mina asked what he was trying to say, and the blushing elf admitted his name was Keith, thanked her for worrying about him, and Mina replied, "I'm Mina. I'm so happy to meet you." Kate blurted, way too excited, asking where the girl was from. The girl stumbled through, Amert, and the elf shot back at once that he'd been there too, just recently. Then he burst out talking about how his mom cooks meals for the army, and how his dad swings a sword way more than a bow, and the sheer energy of it left everyone around him stunned. He read the sign that the tree was part of the route, opened the way for the carriage, and nearly froze in shock at the whole strange setup. And Mina spots it. Every time the carriage rolls by, the trees snap back to where they were, and the road vanishes, just like it was never there. Kate keeps staring at that girl. The carriage lurched to a halt deep in the forest, and Mino's eyes shot wide. He spun around and blurted, "Why did we stop?" A grinning, well-kept Keith laughed, and told them this spot was for elves only. Then he jerked his finger toward the side. A massive magic circle snapped into existence right beneath the carriage, and the elf leaned in to explain it was an ancient portal. They vanished in a blink and reappeared somewhere new, under a dark night sky, with burnt, broken trees wrecking the landscape all around them. The heroes froze in shock as ruined houses hung from the trees. Then they ate by the roadside, and when they asked what it was, someone pointed and said it was the elves' settlement. Mina clutched her chest, her smile died, and she whispered that it was heartbreaking as she scanned the wreckage around them. They stood before a massive tree, and right at its root sat a carved archway that led straight to the gate. Klaus shot Retta a question. Could he start healing the warriors right away? And Retta nodded fast, because that's exactly why he came. One more elf nearly froze when Klaus came back safe, and the elf beside him blurted, "There's a human right here." The elves surged forward with bows raised, demanding what Klaus and the others were doing, and then the heroes jumped off the cart and marched straight for the tree. The elves snapped their bows up, locked onto the humans, and demanded to know who gave Klaus permission to drag humans into their settlement. Klaus roars for everyone to shut up and listen, then drops the bombshell. Red can use healing magic, and he's already saved their son's life after a monster ripped into him on the way. The archers pressed again, asking if they'd really heard about healing magic, then spit out that every human healer was just a greedy swindler. Mina shot them a look and said Ratau wasn't like that, and Keith backed her up by confirming Mina's father was nothing like that either. An ancient elf slid out of the tree, asking why everyone was making so much noise, and the archer spun around, then froze because it was the elder. Edith stepped in and said their family had vouched for Red, begging to take him to the warriors so they could heal him. Red bowed with perfect manners and introduced himself to the elder. He even claimed he was just an adventurer with recovery magic, and said it would heal way better than potions, so if they let him, he'd start patching everyone up ASAP. The elder stepped forward, eyes sharp, and said, "Right then, we gotta visit first that man, then a healer," and when they finally met, their gazes locked. Then he let out a heavy sigh, admitted a change might be due, and agreed to back him, before telling Red Dixon, "I'll guide you, now go save our warriors." The archers were blown away by the elder's call. Rida and Mina climb into the tree and freeze. Wounded elves are scattered across the massive leaves, gasping for breath, and the elder tells them they're lucky because thanks to Hildegard, not a single one died. Mina stared at the elder and blurted, "Who's Hildegard?" And the elder said she was the village's deadliest warrior, the one no one could ever match when it came to magical power. And somehow, it all came down to her fearless leadership. Only then did they finally drive the dragon back, and Retta could only picture the moment the elves cheered in pure joy. She still stepped forward, swallowing the dragon's fiery breath to save everyone, and her warrior pride wouldn't let her hide behind medicines or potions that only eased the pain for a while. She rejected them and chose to fight alongside the other warriors. Redden couldn't stop staring. Hildegard, the best warrior in the whole settlement, was nothing short of incredible. The elder pushed the truth out next. She'd been crushed by serious injuries all over her body, and even he couldn't fully heal her. If he could just dull the pain even a little, he'd be over the moon. Wright swore he'd give it everything, and the elder snapped her finger toward the room, telling him she was hiding behind the curtain. Then he hurried to the opening, scanned it with the others, and asked Hildegard if they could step inside. 2 warriors stood by her, bandages still in hand, and the moment she showed up, shock hit them like a wave. Redo spotted a girl in terrible shape, crumpled on a massive tree leaf, and the shock hit hard, because she was the settlement's best warrior. Just like that, she strained to stand guard, cracked her eyes open, and snapped her gaze to the elder. Then the elder rushed in at once, begging her not to get up. Rage flooded her as she fought her way up to a sitting position, then demanded of the elder, why had that man come to her? The elder smiled and reassured them that everything was fine, then lined in and revealed it was his own idea to invite them, since the young man could use restoration magic. He introduced himself as Rita Dixon, shot straight toward Hildegard, and she recoiled through the pain, begging him not to touch her. So the young man snapped on gloves and promised he'd heal her, then pressed his hands right onto the elf's wounds. After she got hit with a restoration spell, she shrieked that she couldn't move a muscle, and the guy told her he'd hear every single complaint later. The crowd around her stared with panic while she shrieked, begging them to stop and leave her be. Redia shoved, telling her to shift because the wounds would split open, yet she kept screaming, "Don't touch," and the guy snapped back that without touching he couldn't heal her. The girl lunged for his stomach with a kick, and Reed shot back, "How long do you think you can hold out?" Red crumpled to the floor after that kick, clutching the back of his head, and Hildegard sprang up from a huge leaf on the tree. The bandages slipped away, and everyone froze. Madame Hildegard's wounds vanished completely, with the burns leaving not a single trace behind. She stared at the man and double-checked his name, then lined in, dropped the most horrifying truth. Her flesh had melted so hard her bones were showing, and the man realized who she was with terrifying ease. Rita snapped, "Stop, this matters less now," and before anything else, she begged Hildegard to cover herself. The girls flushed so hard they could barely breathe once they finally got it. The boy and the elder spun around, and she barked for every man to clear out of the room, fast. They rubbed their heads like, "Oh no, we got kicked out, didn't we?" And the elder even bowed, thanking her for the healing with all his heart. Red waved it off and said it wasn't a big deal. He just wanted her to be okay. He spun around and shouted that he still had a ton of magic left, then promised he'd rush off and heal the other wounded. The elder beamed and said it would be perfect. Then the boy unleashed healing magic on the warrior, while Mina stood right beside him, ready to help. On top of everything, Mina and Kate also jumped in to help the elf family they ran into in the forest. So happy, they threw themselves into every bit of help with pure excitement. After a while, every spot where the wounded had been sat completely empty. The elder stared in disbelief. There had been 50 of them. Retta just muttered, "I'm damn exhausted." He also said things had been going great lately, and his magic kept swelling, like someone had popped the lid off a container, and his power started spilling out everywhere. Klaus charged up to the heroes and told the elder that every last potion was finally locked inside the warehouse. Then the elder turned and thanked the archer for his hard work. Klaus leaned in and told Retta that thanks to him, every potion they'd bought was safe, and Retta's face lit up with pure joy. The elder told the boy it was time to rest, then go ask Klaus if everything was ready, and the man shot back, "Of course." Edith blurted out that she was praying they de-crash there for the night, because somehow their house was still standing. The hero thanked the elves and promised he'd sleep beside them for the night, while Mina shot back thanks too, because she trapped Keith behind the barricade. Then the whole crew curled up safe for the night with the family. The next day they stormed back to the tree, slipped into the archway at the roots, and after apologizing to her for the disturbance, they tugged the curtain back and boom, there was Hildegard. When she spotted the heroes finally arriving, she called their names again and waited right there. Mina said she was so relieved the elf's skin had healed, and Hildegard stepped forward just to say, "Thank you." The elf was mortified, blurted an apology for kicking them yesterday, and insisted that elves just don't treat people kindly. Rada asked for permission to get the real story, and Hildegard nodded, ready to explain. She started by saying the world had finally cooled down, yet for ages Bandit had been kidnapping elves, and that was the worst news she'd ever been forced to deliver. Hildegard screams that elves live for ages, which is why cruel monsters snatched them and made them serve the wealthy, shoving them into rich folks' cellars, and no one can even tally how many times those poor elves fought to break free and get back what was stolen. Of course, plenty of elves never made it out alive, so rage simmers, they distrust humans and they keep their distance, while Raider admits, honestly and understandably, that he's sorry. Hildegard glanced away and added, "Still, some folks flee their villages and move in with new people." No matter what, she can't stop thanking Red, just like every other warrior he healed, and with all the love in her chest, she pours out one huge, heartfelt thank you. Ritter threw up his hands and said he'd done what had to be done, so he wasn't looking for thanks. Then the girl puffed out her cheeks, shot him a stern look, and snapped that ignoring someone else's gratitude was just plain wrong. Rida fumbled through an awkward reply. "I understand," he said, so he'd accept her gratitude after all, and Hildegard let out a long sigh, then nodded, "Good." Then she spun toward Mina and said, "I heard you've been working non-stop with Keith." She grabbed Mina's hands, pulled her in close, and promised a huge hug as thanks, so Mina hugged her back. She admitted she didn't care for people, but the two of them could call her Hilda as she rubbed Mina's head. Mina jolted, stared in shock, and asked what that elf's shortened name was. Hildesgard said that sounded great. Then Hilda jumped in and announced she'd let Mina call her sister from now on. Mina beamed and thanked her, Sister Hilda. Rida grinned as the girls stood shoulder to shoulder, hugging each other like they'd just won the day. Hildegard felt him near, turned, and said she only cared about one thing. How old did he think she was, just like Mina? And the guy nearly choked on the surprise. She said the hero never treats her like a kid, and it's been going on for ages. She let out a sad sigh, like it hurt to admit it. She can't stand this mismatch. She's been growing at a snail's pace, yet she's already 316 years old, and Mina's jaw drops when she hears it. Then, shocked and proud, she blurted that she felt insanely cool. Living that long had to mean something, and the elf just nodded, smiling, and asked straight up if it was true she'd earned respect. Then he drops the bombshell. 300 years still isn't enough for elves, because that same elder is already 1,000 years old. She lets it slip that the elder from the neighboring village, out a whole month's trek, is supposedly 2,000 years old. Retta goes wide-eyed and starts counting. 1,000, 2,000. Mina's stunned too. Hildegard's ears snapped toward me, like she'd caught something in the air, and the girl hurried to ask what was wrong, while the elf said it felt like someone was sprinting this way. Rida kept pushing the question, and kept flicking his eyes to the entrance curtain, while Hildegard prayed this mystery visitor wasn't bringing bad news. Just a moment later, Klaus barged in and blurted an apology for cutting them off. Then it hit. The black dragon was here, and everyone erupted in screams. Hildegard snapped into action and started packing fast, barking at Klaus to get ready to intercept. Klaus got it and dashed out. Then she slid over to Retta Mina and thanked them for the amazing time, but the moment was over because she had to jump into the fight. Rida told Hilda to wait, but she snapped back that she couldn't. Sure, she'd healed, yet the pain still clung to her, and she fired off the question, "Do you still want to go?" She taps his shoulder and fires back, "Remember, I'm the strongest warrior in our village," then dares him to answer, "If I don't fight, who else will?" The protagonist locked eyes with her, let out a heavy sigh, and brooded over that brutal decision. Then he announced he was going to do it, shocking Mina so hard she grabbed his hand to stop him. He told the girl that if he stayed on the battlefield, he could back them up with magic and heal their wounds, and when Hildegard didn't push back, she said it was fine. So they headed out together, then pulled the curtain aside to reveal the room. Retta winked at Mina and promised they'd all come back safe, then told her to stay here and root for them. Mina fired back that she'd be right there for sure. They burst into the heart of the elven village, and the rest of the warriors were already there. Then Hildegard suddenly ripped the air apart with a loud shout to steal everyone's attention. She stood atop the hill, screamed that the black dragon who just burned their village was their enemy, and admitted she was scared too, because if they bolted now, who would stand guard over their village and their friends? After that speech lit a fire in the warriors. They thrust their hands up and roared that the elves' pride is their arrows, so let's nail him. Then bows snapped up. The crowd screamed they wouldn't slip this time, and they vowed victory would be theirs for sure. Hildegard spotted the black dragon at last, charging in plain sight, then snapped to the archers, ordering them to take their positions. A black dragon swooped in, circling high above the village, and from that dizzy height he scanned the elves' perfectly armed ranks. Retta Dixon, the main character, stared in awe at the beast's towering body, gazing up at the monster from below. Before anyone could breathe, the black dragon was already hovering over the village. Archers stood in the tree he'd carved, shouted the battle was starting, and the archers unleashed their first volleys. A storm of arrows hammered the dragon so hard it staggered, and with each hit, holes ripped through its wings. He shrieked as the arrows tore through his body, and then he flared his wings, fighting like hell to rip them free. Hildegard blasted orders from below, screaming for everyone to keep firing at him. Then she hit the trigger too, right alongside them. The black dragon in the sky threw open its mouth, flashed its fangs, and stared down at the elf village from above. Then Hildegard screamed that it was firing its breath, blasting warnings to every warrior on the ground. Then she cast a spell, shot up a glowing barrier around the archers and herself, and slammed a huge magic circle into the ground beneath her feet. Bloodied and arrow-pierced, the dragon roared and blasted the barrier with fire breath. Then flames swirled around him from every direction. The protagonist stared at the heat rising around him, baffled that it was still blazing even after they'd thrown up a barrier, wiping the sweat off his face like it was mocking him. The dragon blasted a final wave of fire at them, then froze, because the barrier still held strong, and every elf was standing there, totally unhurt. He kept circling the village, stockpiling power after that devastating strike, and when Hildegard saw it, her eyes sharpened. This was the opening, so she barked for everyone to unleash their shots on him. The black dragon bulked up, spun around, and started to gather his breath again, right when the elves caught it and slammed their barrier back up. Rita, still casting alongside the spell, turned to the best warrior and demanded to know how many more repeats it would take before everything finally ended. The elf stared at Rida and blurted out an apology for dragging him into this mess, even though Rida was human. Rito waved it off, saying it was fine because he'd pushed for it in the first place. And right beside them, the other elves were already rushing to refill their arrow supplies. Hildegard beamed as she locked eyes with Red, saying she was still absolutely thrilled he was here, her precious healer. And she told her that once they smash the black dragon, they'll haul the reward from every village and deliver it straight to him. Then Redden grinned, saying being an adventurer is just the best, and he couldn't wait for this moment to finally arrive. Lilligart barked out a fresh command. The dragon's breath is about to run dry, and everyone snapped to attention. Then right on cue, the elves unleashed volleys again, blasting the dragon as it kept surging, breath filling back up as their fire hit. Reda couldn't stop thinking about the black dragon, already riddled with a ton of arrows, bleeding strength and taking real hits. Even if they had a shot at beating him, his expression screamed wild excitement and sharp worry all at once. Then he shut his eyes, tightened his fist, and forced himself not to dwell on it, because deep down, he knew they were coming to beat him. The black dragon blasted his hot breath, and Redo wiped the sweat off his face, swearing it was just scorching steam. Then he snapped out restoration magic on the elf girl. Then the young man whipped his head around and yelled that someone might have been burned, wondering if hot air alone could scorch you, even without getting face to face with the breath. No wonder there were so many wounded. Right after the black dragon burned with his breath, he slumped there, smoke curling from his jaws, and Hilda's insisted everything was fine, just that he was wiped out. Then she snapped everyone into position, telling them to raise their bows and launch the attack. A storm of arrows streaked straight for the dragon's hide. He twisted and darted through them, but then one brutal arrow slammed into his neck. Hilda grinned and said they'd totally ticked off the dragon, and he didn't even seem to notice how busted his wings were. After all, she shrugged, he's just some ordinary lizard. Then the boy shot back, asking about the wings. Then he snapped his gaze to them and shouted that the wing membranes were ripped to pieces. Now he finally got what the elves were after, and he couldn't believe he was still in the air. Then the boy saw the dragon suck in a deep breath, its belly ballooning as it filled up with air, and Red blurted, "What are you doing?" Klaus barked at the kid to clamp his hands in. This is the dragon's buried secret weapon. Then Hilda screamed that the fireball was charging, and she snapped her command to the elves to slam up a barrier. The dragon yanked its mouth wide, and its fangs started to splinter. Then it blasted a whole volley, hurling one fireball after another. Right then, Mina sat inside and helped sort the grass. But in the blink of an eye, the whole house started to violently shake. Mina's fear hit first, and she blurted, "What is it?" The elf boy swore it was all that loud noise and shaking vibrations. But then he stepped in front of her and promised, "Don't panic, I've got you." The girl marched up to Mina, brushed her head, and swore everything was okay. Then Mr. Rita showed up, standing there with Mrs. Hildegard and Klaus. She flashed a smile and asked why the kids wouldn't pray for them. So the little ones nodded, dropped to their knees, and started praying, while Mina desperately wished that Retta would come back alive. Right then the dragon's fireball detonated against the first barrier. Then Hild snapped, "Elf, raise the second barrier too." She demanded they use both shields to shove that fireball back. Red grinned, rubbed his hands together, and said he'd already healed every wounded fighter, so now he'd back the barrier too, pouring in magical power to hold it up. Cloud insisted things were finally going his way, that they actually had a shot, but the other male elf snapped back that they could shove him aside. Suddenly, Red spotted something and shoved Hilda's attention toward the dragon's belly, also swollen like it was about to burst. Hilda gasped, "He's lining up a second shot." And the black dragon roared, ready to burn everyone to ashes at the price of his own life. Then the black dragon hurls another scorching fireball, and this time his fangs snap clean off. Hilda yells that no dragon is this unhinged, and right on cue, he blasts yet another fireball. Hilda screamed for him to run, like, right now, while the young man gripped the barrier and swore he'd never, ever back down or run from here. They have to dump more magic into that barrier, because if this keeps up, it'll fail before they even finish. Then, out of nowhere, the barrier shatters, and a blazing fireball rockets straight toward the elves. Red gets shouted at that he can't die here. He just won't, because leaving Mina alone is out of the question. He insists he has to go back, and then, right behind him, the door suddenly swings open. Rita summons the spirit of the wind, and then, out of nowhere behind him, a grown-up girl appears in the air, looking exactly like Mina. She shoved her hands into the boy's back, and the dark space yawned wider. Then the girl wrapped Red in a quick hug and ordered, "Go on." A black aura ripped out of the passage as the youth snapped his fingers and summoned the spirit of the wind, forcing it to slam into his shield and blast the enemy away. A massive gust slammed into every elf at once, and Hildo's fear shot through him as he blurted, "What is this? Rena felt the weight in his chest vanish, like someone yanked a shutter off and let the light in. His whole body is packed with magic, and it feels like he can do anything now. So the young man calls the spirit of the wind and carves the invisible blade of dance. He thrust out his hand and swore he'd blast the black dragon out of the sky. Then the youth snapped his command, Wind Blade, and it sliced through the beast, hacking off the dragon's wing. The black dragon froze in shock when he realized his wing was hacked clean off. Then he plummeted straight down toward the ground. The monster slammed straight down and tore open the earth beneath it, then shot back up on its paws and unleashed a piercing scream, eyes burning with fury at the elves and the young man who'd cut off its wing. Klaus grinned through the damage and admitted his fangs were snapped, so the fire in his throat was gone. His wing was ripped to shreds, leaving him grounded, and at that point he wasn't a dragon anymore, just a lizard. Hilda yelled that they had to swarm the monster together. Then every elf slammed their magic down, summoning root vines that wrapped the dragon's body tight as a living chain, and that was the spell of the root chain. Radam mulled it over and swore the elves were using the great tree's roots like tentacles. Then Hilda caught his thoughts the instant it hit him. Red totally blindsided her. She couldn't even figure out what kind of person he was. Sure, you'd call him unreliable, but when it came time to face the black dragon head-on, he showed real courage, and honestly, he was just unbelievable. The girl fixed her eyes on Red, stunned by his insane healing power, because just one strike had knocked the dragon's breath right out and sliced off its whole wing. She healed her smile just a little, jaw clenched as she battled against that shock, people she'd never seen before. Then a soft blush crept across her cheeks. The second she saw Red, joy burst in her chest. She thrust out her hand and ordered the boy to get it over with. The girl demanded that the boy pour his wind magic into her hands, and the moment she felt it, her heart hammered like crazy in her chest. Then the boy hovered behind her and finally asked, "Am I doing this right?" Hilda yanked the arrow back, and the boy slammed his magic into the girl's grasp on the arrow, and into the other hand gripping the bow too. "Now pour more into me," Hilda demanded. Redis reassured Hilda that all was well and ordered her to loose the arrow. Then a massive gust of wind surged around it. Hilda blared at the dragon to open up, while the other elves wrestled him down and screamed that this same monster had wiped out their homes. The girl shrieked that Hildegard Ederer and Rita Dixon would crush him, then clamped down on her bow and kept that loaded arrow ready to fire. She yanked the whirlwind's arrows into a perfect straight line toward the target. Then, at last, she let loose one blazing shot that screamed straight for the dragon's head, and the monster stared right into his own death. Finally, that arrow punched straight through the dragon's head. Everything went still. Then the vine snapped loose, and the dragon crashed to the ground, dead. Hild and Rida froze in place, staring at the monster in total disbelief. Then Rida demanded, "So we really beat it?" Hild spun to the boy and snapped back, "Yeah, the win is ours." Hilda shot her hand up and ordered the warriors to shout their victory from the ranks, so loud the forests and cities would echo it, so everyone would know the true warriors lived right here. Then the sky shook with a massive battle cry. The villagers roared with joy and threw the biggest celebration, while the elves lit up too, chattering about finally having their forest back, their own land, and new friends at their side, then raising drinks high for Red Dixon and Mina Dixon. The heroes sank into a round table seat and toasted to everything, while Mina stuffed herself with mouth-watering food and chased it with a red drink alongside the other elves. That elf girl perched beside the heroes, leaned over and asked Red what he thought of those drinks. Did he even like them? He nodded, grinned, and said the fruit wine was getting better every single time he took a sip. The girl beamed and said it meant Mr. Rita had a soft spot for wine. Then she grabbed the jug and topped the young man's glass again. He scratched the back of his head, smiled awkwardly, and let out a nervous laugh. Mina grinned and said the juice and food were so damn good, and right then the elf beside her slid a plate of goodies over and told her to try it too, so Mina thanked him for his kindness. Then Venus blurted out that the holiday was back again, and Redis just grinned like he knew it all along, so the elf youth immediately fired off a bunch of questions, what the holiday was and where it was exactly. Mina said that 10 days ago in Morlanea, a wild festival erupted to celebrate the total destruction of a pack of demonic wolves. The elf girl beside Rida couldn't believe it. She'd handled demonic wolves too. Rida nodded and said, "Yeah, just like this time, but we didn't do it alone." The young man stares up at the sky, jaw tight, saying, "Yeah, we beat the black dragon, but from here on out, it's gonna get way harder." The elf girl reaches out, flips her palm open, and snaps her eyes to Mr. Red, begging him to look. The young man can't help asking if those really are the seeds from the fruit they just ate. The oath girl shut her eyes tight, summoned the spirit of the earth, and bam, a glowing magical seal snapped into place above her palms. She begged the earth spirit to lend its power to the living. Suddenly, the seed pops to life, boom. A tiny plant shoots up in the girl's hands, and Mina blurts to Mrs. Adita that it's super cool. The girl grins and says, "Yeah, we elves can grow plants." Then her smile sharpens as a full tree starts sprouting right in her hands. Ms. Adita shoots a wink and swears that this giant tree will hit full size in just about 3 years. And by next summer, the rest of the trees will be bursting with lush green leaves. Then a male elf strides up and apologizes to Mr. Red for making him wait, and the boy snaps in shock. He'd figured he'd never see the elder, Hilda, or Klaus again. Then he blurts out that they'd been talking about the reward. The elder snapped that the village savings were tiny, so the reward would only be 1/3 of whatever the black dragon's carcass sold for. Rita freezes in shock, blurts out, "Wait, this is really the third one," then immediately adds, "Isn't that pushing it a bit too far?" The elder basically said, "You've helped us so much," and then some folks even joked, "Yeah, 2 won't cut it, maybe a third still won't be enough." Klaus snapped that the heroes had to accept it for Mirror's future, and when Red thought for a beat, he bowed and swore he'd take care of her. Their wind blades plus that air barrier blindsided him, and before he could even recover, he marched up to the dragon and hit it with the storage skill, only for the youth to warn him that the carcass would hog all the space in there. The massive dragon carcass vanishes, and he leans in like, "Me, I'm keeping the wing I sliced off." He figures that'll leave him totally fed. The elder says, "Because of you, we didn't have to hack a single thing open. Now we'll sell the carcass in the human city just the way it is." And Klaus chimes in, "Yep, and we'll use that money to fix everything back up." They'll even toy with the idea of teaming up with humans, and Redder's like, "Honestly, I think that would be insanely cool." Hilda blurts out that this isn't even the best part, the only prize. The elder and the clowns stare in shock, then demand to know what she's really up to. Hilda peeks at the young man and says it's like he's never had a wife. Then she points at him, grins, and declares that if he can't figure out what she means, Hilda's fierce future will end up being his bride. The elves who were cheering in that moment froze in pure shock. Then Reda himself snapped his mouth open and stared, eyes wide, and grabbed his own head as he demanded, "What are you even talking about?" While the elves swarmed Hilda, asking if she couldn't possibly be serious. Whispers ripped through the crowd, and people couldn't stop wondering, did Hild really decide to walk in her older sister's footsteps, especially now that she was talking about marrying a human? Irritation flared in her, and she spun on the elves, shouting that whatever he said, they should come straight to her. At that exact moment, Nina bolted up to the altar and tugged his robe. Then she fired off a question. Did Sister Hilda truly have a sister of her own? The man gently ruffled Mina's head and nodded in agreement, saying he felt he had to warn Mina and the groom-to-be. Then Ratas snapped, asking if she'd really heard right that he was already being labeled as the groom. The elders swore Hildegard really did have an older sister, and the whole village erupted with joy the moment they heard it. Elves barely ever have children, and sisters are rarer than a miracle, so when it happens, it's special. But 50 years ago, everything changed. Hildegard was 260 years old back then. Her older sister ditched the tribe's warnings and bolted off into the unknown, stealing away with her lover, a human. After that, Hildegard's hatred for everyone only kept swelling, because she couldn't wrap her mind around how any man would dare rip her sister out of her life. After that, the elves pushed the elven laws to decree that elves must never mingle with humans again, and Hilda, furious at her sister's abandonment, doubled down, pouring every last second into training to become a warrior. The girl snorted and said love and romance were pure nonsense. She was a warrior. Then Klaus suddenly mimicked Hilda, and her rage snapped. You asked for it. She slammed the seal to life and drew her sword. The young man trailed the girl and drew his sword too, laughing as he bragged that she had zero chance in close quarters combat. Then the brawl kicked off. Hilda and Klaus had the other elves cheering them on like they meant it, and right then Red rubbed the back of his head and blurted, asking if the marriage talk was real or just some kind of joke, while Mina clocked the poor kid's nerves and awkwardly leaned in, asking if he was okay. Next morning hit and the sun blazed bright. Right there on the ground sat a massive seal, with a harnessed cart parked beside it. Kaido leaned in and asked Mina if they could play together next time, and Mina nodded fast, grinning like she couldn't wait. Hilda told Retta they'd miss him, but reassured him he wouldn't be alone for long, because that girl would come running to him soon. Retta just managed an awkward smile and muttered that she brought it up again. He declared her eyes and smiled, saying it was completely natural, because now she finally understood what her sister had felt too, wanting to live with the man she loved. Rita demanded to know if the girl meant it about loving him. Hilda burst out in tears and asked how she could ever joke about that, because she'd truly fallen head over heels for the young man. Klaus was right behind him, mocking Hilda again, claiming she was a warrior, and Retta was barely holding back a laugh. Then Hilda snapped, driving a punch straight into Klaus's face, and Redo immediately felt bad for the guy. The village chief slapped Red on the shoulder and nicknamed him Dear Groom, then said, "If you hate this marriage idea, you can kick her out," and Red just choked out an awkward laugh, right before everything went flying with that kick-close moment. Redeth even considered kicking Hildo out, but the idea crashed instantly. There was no way it could work. Then Klaus strode over and bluntly asked if they were finally leaving. Redeth nodded hard and said it was time to go. Finally, the harnessed leash shot straight toward the seal's core, and the other elves started cheering their friends on, while Reda and Mina waved hard and shouted their goodbye. Drifting through space, Red couldn't shake the feeling that this adventure had dragons and elves in it, and when the Guild and Mrs. Millet hear the truth, they'll be absolutely floored. After a while, the hero finally collides with Mrs. Millet, and the girl shrieks, yelling, "How could this happen?" But they don't even answer, just vanish into thin air, and Red instantly suspects she breaks down, bursting into tears and ripping into them. The girl wiped the tears from her face and admitted she was terrified. Mina had vanished for 2 brutal days too. Then Mina and Redab bowed in deep apology and huddled close in their cloaks. The girl swore she could feel it. Red and Mean were in trouble, because they were done with how the guild treated them, so they vanished and went somewhere else. The same thoughts spun wild inside her head, all of them terrible, and the moment she grabbed the boy's hand, she collapsed into sobs, pouring out her thanks for coming back to her. Right out of nowhere, Klaus cut in, apologized to the girl, yanked off his hood and told them, "Red's out of town because he's saving you." The moment the girl spotted the stranger's sharp, pointed ears, her vision blurred, because there, standing right in front of her, was an elf. After a while, the girl grabbed her pen and started writing, and she blurted out that Mr. Redo was a healer in the elven village who helped wipe out the black dragon. Then she apologized for the chaos she'd caused. Redus gave an awkward grin and nodded along. Then the girl dropped the bombshell. The elves planned to sell the black dragon to fund the village's restoration. Klaus just nodded and agreed. Klaus then dialed someone up and spoke directly to Mr. Red, warning the kid again that he could stash it away. The girl flashed a nervous smile and blurted, "Did you bring the dragon here?" Then her head snapped back like, "What am I even saying?" Because no, he couldn't just drop a dragon into that place. Red and the girl burst into nervous laughter, stealing worried glances at each other. Then Klaus cut in, saying they'd brought it, and pushing that the guild needed to appreciate it, while the girl's fear was so thick she could barely breathe. She screamed at Red not to waste his time on that dragon, tears burning in her eyes, swearing that in this area's guild, nobody could ever truly appreciate a beast like this. Klaus snapped that it was a problem, then Rita pushed him toward the capital, even if he'd rather not go. The girl told them to hold on tight and promised she'd call in the capital guild, people who could actually judge the black dragon. Red flashed an innocent grin and told the girl to go ahead. Then Klaus leaned in and asked how long it would take, roughly. The girl waited in her head and said 2 weeks would be more than enough. Then Klaus shot up and announced he was heading back to the village right then. Then it hits him, our village saw this opening and jumped on it, forging ties with these people, and now he's genuinely excited to work with them again. The girl flashes a confident nod, then grips Klaus's hand hard. The boy leans in and says he'll go tell the elder, and they'll have them coming in just 2 weeks. The heroes stride out of the adventurers' guild, and Klaus blurts, "Should I grab baked fruit for Katha and Adidas?" Weta erupts in laughter and tells Klaus he's actually a pretty great father, and Klaus shoots back that the boy isn't so bad either. The boys bow in sync, and Klaus grabs Red by the moment, thanking him for the help before sending him on his way. Then the boy smiles back and promises, "We'll meet again soon." Klaus ruffles Mina's hair and promises that next time he'll bring Kat along so they can play together. Mina beams and nods right away. Rita waves them off and then it hits Klaus. "Father," so he stares at Mina and decides they finally need a real talk. He gently strokes her head, she giggles at the tickle and then blurts, "So, what's wrong with you?" Redis told them that when they came back, they'd better go apologize to Riggs and Melon, and Mina flashed a smile and nodded right along with the young man. By nightfall, everyone finally crashed into bed, except Mina, because as soon as she closed her eyes, she got a dream where the hooded girl accused her of only chasing her own happiness and promised she'd never forgive her. Mina spun around and froze. Red stood there shattered, crushed so hard that not a single emotion showed on his face. Right behind him, a hooded girl wept bloody tears. Then she yanked out a blade and drove it straight into Red's neck, and Mina only barely got out a panicked, "Stop." Suddenly Mina snapped awake from the stream, shot upright in bed, and when she saw Red beside her, she blurted that it was all just a dream, then broke down the moment she grabbed his hand, crying through the night while she stayed glued to his side, holding on tight. The very next morning, Nosha burst into the Adventurers Guild to find Millet, and after she finished her report, Retta snapped that there was zero sign of anyone searching for Mina. The girl nodded and said, "Our HQ in the royal capital finally reached out to all the branches." She bowed and apologized to the young man for being useless, but Rita waved her off, insisting the girl didn't need to bow, because he was already grateful. After a bit, Rita sprints over to Mina and blurts out an apology for making her wait. Turns out there's nothing to do today, so they can just head out for a walk. Mina flashes that sweet, innocent smile and says yes to the young man. They stroll through the city and hit a bustling shopping street, where the guys glide past a shop that's stacked with juicy, fresh vegetables. Then they rushed into a sweet shop where a cute girl waved them over, and Mina's jaw dropped at the insane pile of cookies. Rita bites into the sweets and freezes. Whoa, they're insanely good. Then Mina takes a cookie taste and instantly goes wide-eyed. No way, they're super crispy. Rita looked the girl over and thought, yeah, this is going perfectly. Mina, it seemed, was fired up by this walk. 3 nights ago, she broke down in tears so hard she couldn't even breathe, crushed by depression all night, because some brutal nightmare must have wrecked her mind. Later, right after the candy store, Red and Mina reach a bridge that spans a little river. Mina practically beamed and told Red to stare into the water. There were fish down there, and their scales flashed like they were lit from within. The young man nodded, leaning in right beside her. No matter how he twisted it in his head, he just couldn't leave her alone, so he figured the best move was to spill the whole truth to her. Then the young man whips around to Mina and declares he's got to talk to that girl. Right now, it's important. Mina blinks in shock and demands, "What conversation?" The girl goes rigid, staring at him like she's bracing for impact. Rita told him she'd never been married, so he had no clue how to raise kids. Yet if she didn't mind, they could be a daughter and a father, and now he just had to ask her if she wanted to be his family. The young man gently stroked Mina's head, and the moment he did, she broke down, sobbing about her family before looking up and begging, "Are you sure? Can I really become your family for good?" Then bam, a voice snapped, saying she couldn't do that, not like this, and the speaker was the same girl who'd shown up in Mina's dream earlier. Rida threw himself over Mina and demanded, "Who are you?" Then the girl yanked off her hood, and Mina stared her down, taking her in piece by piece. She started to cry, pushed herself in front of Rada, and confronted her sister, because the young man was stunned, thinking he'd already met Mina's sister. With a blank stare, the girl nodded and waved her hand, telling Mina, "It's been forever since we last saw each other." The girl said she was hunting for Mina, then flashed a grin and breathed out how relieved she was that you were safe. Mina couldn't wrap her head around a thing her sister was saying. Then she started spinning a blade on her finger and dropped that line. But did she seriously just mean she wanted to join his family? She hurled the dagger straight at the young man and snapped that she'd never forgive him for what he did. The boy whipped aside the dagger with razor precision, and right then Red leaned toward the girl, asking what her plan was. Mina's sister flashed a smug smirk, claiming the boy looked clumsy, but at least he was giving them something to react to. Mina snapped her sister's name out in panic, but her sister's fury flared and ordered her to wait, because first she was going to beat that old man, then Mina would be next. The girl's eyes went wide, but the man snapped his hand over her mouth at once. He demanded to know what she was trying to say. Mina's sister cut him off, told him to shut up, and then hurled another dagger right at him. Red tore him back with magic, then demanded to know if the girl was her sister. The girl nodded and said her name was Rana. Then she literally leapt off the roof of the building. When she hit the ground, she shrugged and said that this was totally normal for the old man, and yeah, she was Mina's sister. Retta stared at Runa's wild new behavior and knew something was way off. Dealing with her wouldn't be easy, not with that kind of strength. So he shoved Mina to hide behind the bridge, and the moment she nodded, she bolted. Retta spun toward Runa and demanded why she'd set out to kill her little sister, but Runa just kept hurling daggers at him and snarled that he wasn't allowed to use her name. The young man slammed his magic up again and batted away the girl's dagger. Then, one dagger slipped past him and carved straight through the armor on his shoulder. The girl flashed a smug grin and said the boy's barrier was dragging slower than it should. Right then Mina snapped at her sister, begging her to stop striking and demanding to know why she was doing it. The girl snapped that it was all because the red guy was a rotten person. He'd been using her, then planning to dump and discard her. She lunged into close combat and unleashed a barrage on the young man. Then with Red spinning out of the way, she demanded again, "So you're trying to take advantage? And you, what exactly are you talking about?" Runa spun in and struck the boy, but he snapped up a barrier to block her. Then the girl grinned and asked if his magic really got stronger after meeting Mina. Red stared in shock. Right then, Runa snapped over to the side and yelled that it all happened because he'd been using Mina's skill, *gift*. The girl slaps down a bunch of magical seals, and daggers burst out of them like lightning. Then Red fires back, asking what the gift is and what else it can do. Red snapped aside like he saw it coming, and Rana says the young man knows this. Mina's power is to beef up the closest target. Red flicked his cape aside and blurted, like the pieces finally clicked. He'd realized why he'd been able to heal a dozen people lately, and how he'd even managed to slice a dragon's wing clean off. Rana couldn't even wrap her head around what that young man was saying. At that exact moment, Mina swooped in and yanked the moment off course, begging her sister to stop, because Retta isn't a monster. Rana snapped a seal into place and hurled a dagger straight at the spot right under Mina's feet, then screamed, "I told you if I go, you're next." Rana demanded to know what you were doing, because you're her sister, and family sticks together. Then said their family since that young man had caught her watching them for days. Rana says she'll take care of herself. First, she'll shield her from that disgusting young man, then she'll bring her straight home. So the boy has no choice, he has to die. She kept hurling daggers at him, and Red tried to dodge, but he still slipped and got clipped by one strike. Mina panicked and yelled for Retta, but the young man tried to calm her by insisting he was okay, until Rana cut in and snapped that this is exactly why Mina and she need to head home together. If they come back together, Rana is convinced they'll both get forgiven, and Mina suddenly explodes into screams, yelling that she refuses to ever go back there. Mina shrieked and demanded her sister explain what was going on, and right then Reddest began healing his shoulder, telling her she didn't get it, while Mina was clearly fighting the urge to go anywhere near that place. The moment Mina met him, her face screamed how brutal Rana's home really was, and then her words snapped into a new direction. The same girl who promised to kill Mina was now calling her home. He claims her words don't match her moves, like she's just as confused as everyone else. Then Rana snaps, "Shut up," and lunges at the boy, yelling that the last thing they need is to listen to her. With one sharp swing of her arm, she orders him to vanish. Rita thrust out his hand, begging Rana to halt and listen, while Mina snapped at her sister, "Don't you dare hurt Dad." Rana snapped to a stop out of nowhere and refused to attack Red. Then the girl burst into tears, shouting that it was totally unfair. She dropped the dagger, demanded answers, and then bam, her vision turned to fog. She clutched her head and crashed to the ground. Rida leaned in to ask what hurt, but the girl snapped at him to stay away. Rune backed up fast and yanked her hood up, and then her eyes started shifting again. Ridity couldn't make sense of what just happened. Then suddenly the girl's eyes changed, and Mina bolted straight toward the young man. She asked him if he was all right, and Rida gently kneaded his hand, telling Mina he was basically okay. Then he gently stroked her hair and asked if she was okay. Mina shook her head, saying no. Then Mina flushed bright red and blurted that when the boy asked if the girl wanted to be a family, she practically exploded with happiness, and she wanted that same family with him too. But yeah, her sister is family too, and today something was off with her. She acted weird like nobody's business. She burst into tears and begged the young man to save her sister. Then Rida pulled Mina into his arms, swore everything would be okay, and promised he'd figure out a way. Later that night, Mina drifted off in bed while the young man sat at the table, staring at his book, his mind racing, convinced he had to act and act now. Before she ever met Rada, Mina was stuck living with her sister inside some underground organization, where life was brutal and hard every single day. Turns out she had a gift that supercharged the closest target's power, so they shackled her in chains and made her fire that skill at the people in their organization every single day. But she couldn't trigger it on purpose, and before long the organization got bored of her because she couldn't activate her skill no matter what. All she was ever allowed to do was sit there as a hostage for her sister, because her sister's physical abilities were unreal, so she was raised to become an assassin. She was ordered to hunt down and execute anyone the organization deemed undesirable, and at one point, they even forced her to take out a top official from a rival crew. She still had the strength to slip out of that organization anytime. Then Mina showed up, and she chose not to. If Mina had been alone, Rana could have slipped out, but Mina was stuck as a hostage. So on the day every guard got wasted, Mina somehow snatched the keys. At last, she snapped free from the shackles and bolted to safety, because if she could escape, her sister would finally be able to break loose too. The very next day, Rida and Mina slipped out of the city, and the young man stared into the distance, declaring this place was perfect for what came next. He spun toward Rana and demanded, "Are you there?" Then he urged her to pop out right now. She blinked in shock, and the next second she was there. Rana smirked and asked if this guy really thought he could hand Mina over to her quietly and peacefully. Mina spun toward her sister, but Retta cut in fast, saying every word was wrong and that he'd come here today to cure the girl, while Rana just stood there, totally lost. She yanks out her blade and snarls that he really chose to show up and die. Then she presses, Does he honestly think his barrier can actually hold against her real attack? Rita shot it down hard, saying it was nothing like that, and that's why he'd keep his tone a lot more serious today. Then the young man summoned a spirit of fire, and fireballs erupted across the whole territory. Rana froze in shock and blurted, "Red, what is that?" And Red grinned, saying it was pure mind-blowing magic, but it would destroy him. The girl hurled a storm of daggers at Rita and yelled that she'd strike first, before Rita could even use them. Then the boy taps into storage, and the girl's daggers streaking at him suddenly vanish. Runa's eyes go wide, and she reads the reply saying it might be a little scary. Then Rida leaned in and told her to hold on tight for a moment, snapped the fireballs into action to torch the enemy, and shouted for a full-on volley of fireballs. Rana cringed as fireballs came flying, and she snapped her teeth together, then sprinted out of the way before the next blast could hit her. A storm of blazing fireballs ripped through the air toward Rune, then slammed into the ground and detonated in a fiery blast. She juked out of the way, then launched her blade like a dart, but the boy snapped his storage skill, and the dagger vanished into his inventory. Then he hurled fireballs straight at Rune, and the girl snapped that since tossing them was pointless, she'd close in and chop the boy's head off herself. Right behind the boy, Rana suddenly materialized, and Mina, gripping Red's cloak, yelped in pure panic as she cried out to her sister. Rita snapped her gaze back and slammed a wind barrier into place. Then the ruins crashed down hard, smashing the seal on the ground. She couldn't believe it. This young man had lured her right into a trap, and then the spell yanked her straight up into the air. Reda clenched his fists and grinned, saying he could finally snatch the girl now. Then he slammed out another skill, calling chain shackles to whip around her and trap her. Rana crumpled and Red snatched her before she hit the ground. Mina finally exhaled in relief, while the girl erupted in screams and begged the young man to let her go right now. Then she spun to Mina and laid out what was happening and why that girl had walked out on her. Mina snapped back, saying that just wasn't true. Rana swore she'd take her home and end her, but Rita shrugged it off, said the girl fought hard and that everything was finally okay, and Rana just couldn't get why that young man was making it sound so simple. Rated didn't give her a word. He snapped his hands seal awake and unleashed magic to break the grip of control, then slammed his palm right onto the girl's face. Rana replayed the faces of those men, who praised her for finally wiping out the head of that hostile organization. Then he snatched the Rod of Dominion, swung it into action, and shouted, "Rune Pierce," before commanding her to drag her sister, Mina Pierce, back home. She has to wipe out anyone who gets in her way. Rana, terrified, blurts out what's happening, and then, out of nowhere, her vision starts to smear and fade. She shrieked, and the staff in the man's hands snapped to pieces. He snarled that it was all because of that runaway girl, and he'd just lost his precious staff. She ripped open in agony, and her eyes flashed into a new shade. Then, after a while, she was already in the city, standing on the roof of a building. She smirked, saying she'd finally found Mina, and now she was dragging her home, while Rune's voice, screaming in terror, demanded that he not take Mina back. She spasmed in agony once more, gasping that Mina had to be brought back home. Then her eye flickered and changed color again. Red kept his hand on the girl's face, and her tears spilled as she cried for her sister, thinking back to how Mina once smiled beside that boy. Just as Rana hit rock bottom, her second consciousness snapped into place, and it felt nothing but relieved that she'd finally come to her senses. Rana clutched her head, totally baffled. How was she here and what was even going on? Then she watched Rada gently stroke Mina's head, and the girl snapped that it wasn't fair that it only happened to Mina. A murky dark aura started swallowing her up, and she snapped that it wasn't fair at all, but Rana's other personality fired back, saying emotions shouldn't be the ones calling the shots. She begged for it to stop, because that dark aura was devouring her from the inside out, and she knew it wasn't fair. When Rana stared at Mina, she realized the control couldn't be broken, so she cried out for someone to save her. The girl, tears streaming down her face, swore she'd kill them, and right then, Rita clamped his hand to Rana's face, while the girl begged someone to help her. Red screamed that he'd save the girl right now, and the spell kept burning on, working like a lifeline. Then, with a jolt, the dark shadow in Rune's eyes started to split and shattered completely. The girl tilted her head to the sky and froze at the blazing sun, and the smiling Red staring back. Rana's tears burst out the second she saw it. At that exact moment, Mina called out. Rana jerked away fast and snapped that Mina shouldn't come near her. Tears spilled down her face as she confessed she'd said a ton of awful things, and Mina snapped back, loud and clear, "Everything's fine. I get it. I understand you perfectly." Rana begged Mina for forgiveness, because watching her smile here ripped open a jealous ache in her chest. Then rage surged when she couldn't understand why Mina wasn't happy, and she snapped into anger. Mina bolted up to Rana and threw out an apology for sneaking off alone, and Rana gently stroked her head, telling her she had nothing to be sorry for. Runna's face flushed red as she snapped that Mina needed to be cared for. Then she pushed her back because she had to go. She needs to run back and tell them Mina's dead, or at least something like that. Then she'll scramble up a plan on the spot. Nina snapped into panic. She'd said she'd come back, and now she needed a plan fast, while Rita yelled that she couldn't pull that, and that he absolutely wouldn't let it happen. Runna told them she had to do it, because if she didn't, they'd come hunting for them, and she also promised that he'd figure out a way to drive them off and keep the girls safe. Runna clenched her lips and fists, trembling with pure terror. Retta offered to let her stay with him and Mina swore she wanted them to become a real family. And just like that, Runna was suddenly part of their family too. She flashed a smirk and let the cat out of the bag. The boy had come up with something seriously strange. Rita clamps her by the shoulders and snaps that it doesn't matter if he proposed or not, because that's what truly made Runna feel happy. That's why he'll make Runna smile. He asks her to join their family, and the poor girl is left completely stunned, unable to get a single word out. She broke down in tears and nodded, saying she was in. Then she promised she'd lean on the young man. Mina lunged forward and flung herself at Runna. The girls clutched each other and broke into tears. Runna even blurted out an apology to Mina for scaring her. Then Rita joined them in a warm hug, smiling like everything was finally okay, while the heroes stood together in the middle of the field, locked in embraces as a gentle wind fluttered their clothes. Soon enough, Mina was clinging to Red's neck, giggling like crazy as she blurts out, "Daddy," and her friend just laughed and said she calls Red with that sweetest, kindest affection. The man turned to Runna and demanded her name, and she shot back, "I'm Runna Dixon, Mina's sister," smiling like she couldn't wait to meet you. Red snapped a look toward Runna, and the girl blurted, "What's wrong?" But Red just admitted he couldn't stop wondering what she'd call him. Runna fidgets with her fingers, then her smile blooms as she says, "All right, then I'll call you Daddy." The man said it sounded great, and Runna shot back that a proposal was already on the table. So what else could you possibly call it? The young man froze when he heard Rita had just proposed to her. Rita tried to shut it down, claiming the girl was too young anyway. Then Runna stuck her tongue out and shot back that next month she'd finally be old enough. Then Runna blurts that they need to head to the guild right now, and Retta fires back, asking when she became such a standout character, while Mina is just thrilled to see her sister this cheerful. The man kept staring at them, grinning like this was about to get even better, and then he laughed right along with the young man. After a while, the heroes burst into the Adventurers Guild to tell Mrs. Millet everything, and Mrs. Millet turned to Mina with a huge smile, saying she was so happy the girl finally met her sister. Mina bowed her head and thanked her. Then Runna cut in mid-conversation and snapped her gaze at Mrs. Millet, asking what's going on, only for Runna to tell her, flat out, that they'd be back next month. She pops up right in front of the woman and declares, "We're going back, so you can change from daughter to wife." Mrs. Millet freezes in shock, then blurts out that it's a good thing. Rita stared in shock, and then Runna cut in, saying the young man wanted to make her happy by becoming her family, and she didn't hesitate at all. She blushed, spun in place, and asked the young man straight up if he'd really forgotten all about it. Then Mrs. Millet burst out laughing, saying she couldn't wait for it. Red's eyes burned with tears as he suddenly felt everything slipping into his hands, and he demanded Miss Millet explain where she was talking from. At last, a full week had slipped by since Runna and Mina became real sisters, and now Red, Mina, and Runna strolled through the city like nothing could stop them. Then Elliot suddenly called out to Red, shouting "Brother," and sent a text asking if they were really back walking together again. Rita walked up to Elliot and Tex and said hello. Then Elliot snapped that people were getting hurt during the cleanup, and the trouble was coming from right there. Tex added that it's been way warmer lately, so monsters have crawled out again, and he warned them to watch themselves. Runna winked and waved it off like it was nothing, insisting the girl would handle them with zero effort if they slipped out. Then she grilled Red to confirm it, and Red nodded, agreeing. Tech called it a good sign, and Reddit chimed in that as a parent, he couldn't let Runna push herself too far, while Elliot pointed out that Reddit never even realized just how wild and energetic Runna really was. Then he snatched the boy and insisted they had to rush off to this amazing place for a drink. Sure, Red had heard a whisper that he'd like it, but he didn't even know what that meant, and the scariest part was imagining what would happen if his daughters ever found out. Runna burst in and told him to hurry because she was starving, and Mina was starving too. Elliot clutched himself, teeth chattering as he swore he'd figured the boy out completely, so Red barked out a nervous laugh, saying it was bad enough either way. Ellie said that if Mina shot him a disgusted look and warned him never to come near her again, it would crush her the hardest. Mina shouted at Red, and he immediately scratched his head, apologized to the girls, and promised he was on his way. then he waved at his comrades and disappeared. Rana marched through the city until she finally stepped up to the young man and demanded, "What's the greatest place around here?" And Redder even choked on the spot. He grabbed his head and snapped that a friend swore the place had top-tier alcoholic drinks. Runnies smirked, then leaned in and murmured something to Mina while Red wasn't watching. Mina hurried over to the boy and yanked on his cloak. Mina blushed as she snapped at Red that it was downright indecent, and the young man froze there, completely stunned. Mina whipped around to Rana and asked, "So, was that okay?" Rana burst out laughing, then patted her head, while Rita shook her head and said he really wasn't going anywhere with that. After a while, Mina and the girl grabbed brooms and swept the yard together, long dresses swishing as their hair disappeared under soft, light scarves. Right then, Rana and that man were whipping up food, until a girl barged in and announced she'd heard a man named Rita Dixon was staying with them. Right then, the young man sat at the table, nose in the book, putting magic to work. Then a brutal stomp thundered through the room. Mina and Rana burst into the room, and the girl instantly said, "Red's got a visitor, and it's a girl." The young man rubbed the back of his head and blurted, "Who is she?" Mina just groaned, "I forgot to ask her name." Runic snickered and blurted, "So can you be our dad's ex?" Then Red spun around and warned, "Yeah, I'm gonna be seriously mad." Runic burst into laughter and fired back, "Wait, you mean that's actually true?" Red stormed out of his room, and the girl spotted him instantly. Her whole face lit up because he actually came down, and yeah, she used to be part of Red's crew. Redan nearly choked on shock when he spotted Isha Alro, then blurted what she was doing here, only for her to sigh, fold her arms like armor, and warn him not to ask. When she heard that Gil had booted the boy out, she stormed off too, abandoning the Black Wolves, leaving Red stunned as she demanded, "Did she really do that?" Because that girl had only just joined them. Aisha still hears Gil's tell her, "If you're not happy, then get lost," and she snaps those exact words into the young man's face before walking away. Rana frowned hard and snapped that the healer wouldn't get kicked out like that, so what was the leader even thinking? Then Rana shot up with an idea and told him the boy had been flashing his hands around and chatting up girls. Meanwhile, the boy spun around and swore it wasn't like that at all. Nocto and Rosalie had a thing for Gil. Yeah, Mina pressed hard. What about Isha? And the girl instantly blushed, asking if this whole mess was really about her. The girl launched into a story about how Reed had someone waiting there, and the young man shot up and clamped his hand over Aisha's mouth, cutting her off cold. Then he demanded, straight to the point, why that girl was even there. Aisha admitted she'd been traveling solo for a while, burning through her money with zero payoff, until she spotted the migration sheet, which is what landed her in Amaris, because if she got seriously injured, the losses would be catastrophic. She threw herself into the civil police, and now she stands watch as a gate guard at a one-owner mansion. Honestly, staying right here turned out to be the best move. Retta lit up and said Aisha's a guard now, and he swears the police pay is steady. Then Aisha leaned in and said she wants to repay the village that took in a stray orphan like her. Then the girl grins and drops the wildest rumors about the young man. So tell me, is it true he slaughtered a dragon in the elven settlement? Runnies flashed a nervous smile and asked, "Wait, did I really hear dragons and elves?" Minus grinned and said, "Dad busted his tail trying to make it happen." Aisha's eyes widened. She'd been thinking it was just some random person with the same last name, but then it hit. It was actually true. Rita let out a nervous laugh, rubbed the back of his head, and blurted that it was just a surprise. Then Aisha and Rana snapped wide-eyed, stunned out of nowhere. Aisha snapped her arms across her chest, exhaled, and said that unlike Gil, this young man had pulled off an insane amount in just 3 weeks. Rena pressed, asking if the Black Wolves really couldn't climb their ranks any higher, and Aisha shot back with a dead-straight face that it was nothing like that at all. Gil and Gilliam turned into full-blown bandits, and now the law is hunting them. Red froze in shock and demanded to know how it got this bad. Aisha couldn't believe it. She finally got a shot to talk to Rosalie, and learned Rosalie had already ditched the Black Wolves. Then Rosalie dropped the real bombshell and told her Nikto was gone too. Even after Gil and Gilliam kicked out Red, they still refused to change tactics or equipment, so medical bills piled up fast, and in the worst case, someone could have died. Gil was reckless to the point of being stupid. He rushed straight at the monsters and bragged he could take them down without Red. He kept yelling that he didn't need him at all, and the girls could only assume the young man was obsessed, because admitting it was clearly the hardest thing for him. Aisha leaned in and asked Rosalie, "Don't you still love Gil?" And Rosalie just grinned, admitting that the love she used to have was gone, because now Gil was just hopeless. Aisha told Red the whole story, and they even had to stock up on healing supplies. Then, when it came down to it, they grabbed a loan and bolted, and that's how they turned into bandits. Runnies forced a nervous smile, and Mina plus Rida went wide-eyed in shock. Rida raked the back of his head, looking completely crushed. He said that if he tried to remember, Gil had been stirring trouble for ages, yet somehow he always showed up with a warm smile and a kind heart. Mina snapped her gaze to the young man, trying to lift his spirits, and the girl admitted he had no power to change a single thing around here. Aisha chimed in that, sadly, she was right. Then Aisha abruptly switched gears, her eyes lighting up as she asked Mina and Rana who those adorable girls were standing beside him. Rita flashed a wicked smirk and dared the boy. Did he really kidnap those kids? Then she snapped, saying she could hand it straight to the police, and the moment the girl even thought that, Rita went off, yelling, "How could you even say that?" Aisha burst into laughter and told the boy it was just a dumb joke, so he shouldn't freak out, while Rana blushed and admitted he'd stolen her heart too, and Aisha just kept laughing. Aisha bursts in and tells them her name is Aisha Alshro, once a member of Red's group, and she's practically glowing with joy to finally meet Rana and Mina. Mina flashes a grin and tells everyone, "I'm Mina Dixon, Red's daughter." Rana winks right back and says, "I'm Rana Dixon, Mina's sister and Red's wife." Aisha whipped around to the young man and snapped that she didn't understand a single thing, while Reddy's cut in and declared that neither of them were her real daughters. Then Aisha jabbed a finger at another girl and blurted that she was totally adorable, asking who she was. The girl introduced herself as Mailing and said she wanted to hear their stories, while the man hurried to apologize and Aisha instantly clocked it. Mailing was his daughter. Mina blurted that she wanted to hear about Red's adventures too, so Aisha turned to him and asked if he minded, and Red shrugged, like, sure, go ahead, but his life as an adventurer didn't exactly scream action-packed. He's totally mortified to say it himself, so if you could help him, Aisha, he'd be endlessly grateful. Rana promised she'd be dying to hear about Red's love life. Then the young man snapped at Aisha to drop the subject. Aisha promised she'd start with the day Rita saved her, and the boy felt something was terribly wrong with him, because Aisha said it all began the moment they met. Right out of nowhere, Aisha blurted, "I forgot why I came here," then remembered her master's order to hunt down the healer, Rida Dixon, and bring him back, and somehow Rida was left utterly stunned. The girl insisted she'd already settled everything in the guild, so a carriage was waiting outside, and he had to go with her right now, but Rita had no clue what she meant, or which master she was even talking about. After a while, Rita and Mina, Rana, and Aisha piled into a cart and rode off, and Rita turned to Aisha like, "So what's my master really got cooking with him that we even had to prep a whole cart for it?" Aisha blurted, "Who knows?" because she doesn't even recognize that boy anymore, and all she was told was to get herself squared away, like it's some top-secret info she's not allowed to question. Suddenly, Mina shoved her head out the window and blurted to Aisha, "What kind of person is your master?" Aisha said he was a bit strange, and Mina just stared, totally lost about what she meant. Aisha flashed a smile and told him, "If you're calling me an aristocrat, then I ditched the family estate and built a whole city right on the frontier. We're not even given the choice to call it anything but great." Aisha says he always teamed up with the police and hit patrol every single time. He teams up with the dwarves to build those outer walls and new dwellings, so Rana insists he's wildly strange, while Aisha is like, maybe he met Rida somewhere. After a while, Minasa spotted a massive mansion. Aisha nodded and told him it was the owner's place. Before all that, she still had one thing to do, and while the carriage kept rolling, it suddenly screeched to a halt, leaving the heroes totally baffled about what just happened. Rana let out a heavy sigh and said, "We've got guests." Retta leaned in and pressed the girl for what that meant. Then the young man snapped his gaze to the carriage window and demanded, "So what's happening out there?" Suddenly, a whole crowd barreled up ahead of the carriage and barked at the driver to stop, and he insisted they were the good guys because they'd actually chosen to bring it to a halt. He thrust his sword forward and basically told them, "Go on then, do us both a favor and die." Aisha yanked out her weapon and demanded to know if the man even understood whose cart this was, or where it was headed. The guy scrunched his face and shot back, "Why do you care? There's a healer in the cart." Out of nowhere, a voice cut in Rana, already perched on the carriage roof, demanding if they really needed a healer, and the girl shot back. Their answer was a flat refusal. Ridu stared in shock as Aisha screamed at Rana for doing something reckless, and right in that moment, Rana vanished off the cart roof. Suddenly, a nasty sound cut the air. Aisha whipped around, and there was Rana, standing there like a storm after she just sliced down that man with her blade. The man crumpled to the floor, knocked out cold. Aisha's eyes went wide with shock as she demanded, "What just happened?" Rana stood there looking harmless, spinning her curved dagger like it belonged in her palm, and then boom, a man appeared beside her, started insulting her, and slashed his sword straight at her. At that exact moment, Rana ripped her dagger forward and drove it straight for his neck. Then the men were left stunned, not recognizing a single thing about her, and all three of them surged at her at once. Rana sprang into the air like lightning and knocked all three bandits out cold with brutal back-of-the-head strikes, and when the rest blinked in shock, she spun around and grinned with a truly demonic smile. She started swinging words and dragging the men left and right, and Aisha jumped in, saying a rumor's been spreading lately. A brutal, strong girl who exterminates monsters just joined the police and adventurers. This girl's got silver hair and blonde vibes, plus that dark skin glow. Wait, are they talking about Rune? Aisha screamed at Rana to stop, begging her to just detain them and hand them over to the cops, while Rana grinned, her leg pinned on the bandit's neck, insisting they were already just unconscious. After a short while, Rana had every bandit hogtied and dumped on the ground, and then she sprinted up to Red with a grin that practically begged, "Was that good?" The boy and Mina patted the girl's head, and when Rita said Rana was great, she told her not to go overboard. Rana just giggled. Aisha cut in fast, told them the police would handle the rest, and shouted that it was time to move on. Then Rita and the girls piled into the carriage and took off. Then the young man spotted the owner's mansion, massive, shining, and downright majestic, and Mina immediately tugged her sister over to witness the view, while Rana stared in shock because the city wasn't just one place at all, and they even spotted the Mastaccio dwarf's shop there. Rita told Aisha they'd clearly fallen for the city's scenery more than the mansion, and Aisha burst out laughing as she nodded along. After a while, they finally reach Aisha's master's mansion, and a stern, dignified man steps forward to greet Mr. Reddickson, and the young ladies right behind him. The man introduces himself as Maisel, a butler, then waves the guests inside, because the house's owner is already waiting. The heroes stride through a mile-long corridor, burst into a chamber with a massive door, and right as they step inside, a young man and a girl are waiting. The young man throws his arms wide and says he's thrilled to see Reddickson. The young man grins and claims he's the master of Amort, Tita Amert Rodenbert. Then the girl beside him steps in and says, "I'm Gabrielle Rodenbert." Redad grips the boy's hand and blurts, "Nice to meet you, I'm Redad Dixon." Then the girls step in, one after another, introducing themselves with their names. Then they dropped onto the sofas, and Tita said they'd finally been told everything that happened. Tita and Gabriel bowed, and that young man demanded the guests let them apologize first. Rana blurted out that she couldn't believe it. The nobles actually bowed to the commoners like they mattered, like they were worth something, and she also admitted that Tito felt weird as everyone said he would. Rada smiled politely and told them to lift their heads as they swallowed their apologies. Tita flashed a smile and thanked Mr. Red Dixon for coming to his estate. He seemed downright kind. Then Rita stepped up, pressed a hand to his chest, and demanded answers from Mr. Rodenbert. Why invite them to the estate in the first place? Tita, the young man, flashed a grin and told the guests they didn't have to act so stiff, just call him Tita. That's what the locals already call him, and Rita immediately stepped in, agreeing with a warm Mr. Tita. Then Tita's smile drops to seriousness, and he tells the boy, "Don't circle it, go straight to healing your sister, Valerie." He tells them it's better to see it once than to hear about it 100 times. Then he invites everyone in and promises to guide them himself, until Mr. Tita whips around to Mezel. The butler nods, and he marches the estate's guests through behind him. Then they head straight into the manor's back room, and Mr. Tita points down the hall, telling them his sister's room is further along. Then Butler Maisel whips around to Rune and Mina and demands they come with him, and while they're still blinking, he has them fix up tea loaded with sweets, so when the girls taste it, they can't help but stare and fire back. "Wait, what are you up to?" Gabriel steps in fast, looks totally baffled, and blurts out an apology, because this is absolutely not something anyone should ever show little girls. Rana laces her hands behind her head and nods. Mina jumps in too, wishing her dad the best. Then the young man flashes a wave at the girls. Then Retta blurts out, "So what condition does your sister come in?" And Mr. Tito freezes, totally stuck, until Gabrielle cuts in and says, "This happened a year ago." Back in that remote lakeside house, the whole family sat down for dinner, and everyone was smiling like nothing could go wrong, until, out of nowhere, a terrifying flame erupted from her body. Mr. Tito swore it looked like she was swallowed by fire, but that flames actually knocked her into a coma, and it's been a full year. Rena asked if that girl had been checked by a doctor, and Mr. Tito let out a heavy sigh and said, "Yes, doctors examined her, and even the capital's healers showed up, but they couldn't do a thing." Just recently, like the other day, Mr. Tito heard that some weird new healer had shown up at the Adventurers Guild. Then the young man barged to the door, knocked, and told his sister Valerie they were heading straight to her room. Rita bursts into the room first, then she apologizes to Mrs. Valerie for barging in, and the girl slips onto the bed and lies there in deadly silence. A young man stared in stunned silence. There, on a massive bed, lay a fragile girl, while two mates stood right beside her. That young man would have sworn she was just peacefully asleep, until Gabrielle strode up, grabbed the blanket, and demanded Valerie's forgiveness. She yanks off the blanket and bears every inch of Valerie's scorched body, barely, their nightclothes clinging so lightly they don't tear into the burns. Retta demanded Mr. Tidd's permission to examine her, and the young man nodded, so she stepped in, faced the girl, and apologized straight to her. Rhett Atkinson tells her, "I'm here to heal you," but the young man can't shake the doubt. If those were real burns, why isn't there any inflammation on his skin? He presses his hand to the dark spot and unleashes healing magic, while the boy sweats, convinced those marks are scars, until the dark spots vanish. Retta froze, stunned, and thought, is this really enough? Then panic kicked in. He couldn't figure out why the others still couldn't heal her. Suddenly, the young man spots the dark spots shrinking again, and just when he thinks it's over, the area that was healed is swallowed up by fresh dark spots. Mr. Tita slapped a hand on his head and muttered that it was just the way things were. Healing wouldn't touch these burns at all, and when Gabrielle let out a heavy sigh, she admitted nobody could even begin to figure out what kind of burns they were. Rida paused for a heartbeat, then blurted, "My body just caught fire," and to make it worse, it fought her treatment tooth and nail, with those wounds refusing to heal. These aren't just simple burns or regular injuries. Someone made this happen on purpose, artificially, and the young man decides he has to try something. A glowing magical seal blossoms on his hand, then he drags it across his face. Bam, using the detection skill, and a new seal ignites right on his eye. Mr. Tita leaned in and demanded to know why the boy used the detection skill. Redia nodded, and explained that adventurers rely on this kind of magic all the time, since it's the go-to for spotting traps and identifying objects. If that place is packed with magic, the glow turns blue, like a living aura, while blessed power shines white. The young man stared at Valerie's aura, and it burned black. Black meant a curse, and Rita instantly realized she was trapped under one. Mr. Tito froze in shock and demanded to know if she was truly cursed, but he couldn't wrap his head around why it happened to her, while Gabrielle shook with terror for Valerie. Mr. Tita swayed, clutching his face like he couldn't believe it, because he had zero idea what they were supposed to do next. Gabriel tells them to run straight to the capital's Healers Guild for answers, and Mr. Tita backs the girl up, then asks the chilling question. What are healers even supposed to do about a curse like this? Rida cut in, demanded Mr. Tita wait, and caught the young man's attention. He looked totally distracted and rushed out an apology to Rida, swearing he'd pay for his services for sure. The young man insists that's not what he means at all. He's just mastered the spell and hasn't even used it yet, and Rida says it all cautiously. The young man leans in with total confidence and asks Mr. Tidd if he can try casting a curse removal spell. Mr. Tada snapped in shock, yanked Red by the shoulders, and demanded to know if he truly had that kind of magic. Red swore it was real, and then Mr. Red shoved the challenge right back at him. Show me, use it. Reddit steps up to Valerie and admits he can't promise this spell will work, but while the specialists from the capital are on their way, he'll do everything he can to dull the girl's pain. Then Gabriel and Tita lock hands and stare at him with hope blazing in their eyes. Redis threw his arms wide, shut his eyes tight, and shouted for the spirits of light to crush the evil force. Then he snapped his eyes open and unleashed the curse removal spell. Right under the girl, a massive, blazing magic seal slammed into place, and at the same time, a bright sphere ignited in her hands. Right then, the girl's mind was engulfed in a raging, wall of fire blaze, and tears poured down her face as the heat crushed her, and the darkness swallowed everything. She sobbed, replaying that mysterious voice in her head, except she couldn't see a thing, and she couldn't hear anything either. Valerie couldn't even guess how long she'd been trapped in the dark, and the girl begged for help with shaking urgency because the heat was crushing her. Right above the flickering flame, the dark space cracked open and split like it was breaking apart. She saw it all. In the real world, she jolted awake and screamed her brother's name like pure panic, because now she's insanely hot, and Mr. Cheetah roared that Valerie had just woken up. Right then, Retta whipped around to Mrs. Valerie and said, "It's all good," and slowly but surely, the curse started to unravel. Fear hit the girl and she blurted, "Who are you?" The main character just smiled and said, "I'm Retta Dixon and I'm a healer." The girl spotted her brother Tid and her sister Gabrielle nearby, wrapped in a tight hug as they watched everything unfold, and relief crashed over her face like, thank goodness. Tito went wide-eyed when Valerie's dark spots started vanishing. She sat on her bed clutching Red's clothes, while Red finished his spell. Gabrielle sobbed and then grinned as the girl's disappearing spots cleared her skin. Right then, Red barked at Mrs. Valerie to hang tight, because he'd throw every ounce of power he had at it. The girl flashes a smile and nods, promising she'll try, and the young man keeps hammering away with his magic. Then Mrs. Valerie tries to say something to Rita, but pain hits again, and she screams. Rita could feel it getting tougher, and his mana was draining fast. He started to panic, thinking he might not survive the purification and finish it. Still, something strange clings to the young man's aura, and he can't break free. Devastation surges through him as a blinding light erupts between him and Valerie. Red dumped his last slivers of mana into the air. Then a blazing light snapped into a swirling vortex, whipping Tita and Gabriel's hair and clothes as they threw both hands up to shield their faces. Tita had no clue what that blinding light even was. Then, after a beat, it faded away, and Reddit and Valerie were suddenly sitting on the bed. Rita swung toward Mrs. Valerie, ready to speak, but the girl cut him off and insisted everything was totally fine. The young man started to collapse, muttering that he couldn't take it anymore. Then Red FL shot straight into Mrs. Valerie's lap, and the guy went bright red with embarrassment. Mr. Tita leaned in and asked the girl how she felt. Then she gently stroked Red's head and smiled, saying she was totally fine, thanks to Mr. Red. Red Up crashes into the past, where Nikto tells the young man he has to learn how to control the mana inside his body, and the young man just can't stop thinking about it. Then he ripped the monster apart with the wind cutter, and Nekta immediately told the boy, "You nailed it, everything was perfect." She said it's just like alcohol. If a young man doesn't master his control, he'll spill everything he shouldn't. If you pour too much, the glass bursts at the seams, the alcohol splashes everywhere, and suddenly the bottle's gone, and the young man grinned like, "Yeah, I get it," just like the girl meant. Nikto cast a magic spell and showed the boy exactly what she meant. Then the girl summoned the spirits of flame. She warned, if you squeeze magic too hard, something awful breaks loose. Then she yanked the flame spirits back into play and blasted the enemies, detonating the whole area. Red was terrified. Right then, Gil leaned in and demanded of NATO, did she and Rada really want to kill them, or did they plan to wipe out every last goblin for good? Nukito leaned in and asked if he really got it, and the young man grinned, promising he'd do his best to remember what she said. Nikto nodded and said she knew he could pull it off. Then Reda ruffled his hair and asked, "Wait, is this all a dream?" He admitted he'd lost control and somehow blacked out, still reeling from everything they taught him back then. Suddenly, Mr. Tita spun toward him and wished him a good morning. Mr. Tita was sitting in a chair by the bed, book in hand. Then the young man said Reda had finally woken up, and his own surprise practically jumped out of him. He spun around and caught Mr. Teed right as he started to rise, panicking to apologize for hogging their bed. Tita told the boy to drop it because he'd already saved his sister. So now Mr. Tita was really gone, just like they feared, and the curse was finally broken. The boy fired back that Valerie had been tested for detection, and boom, the curse lifted. Rada shot back that he was relieved, then turned to Mr. Tid and demanded where his daughters were. Mr. Tid answered that Mina and Rana were in the bathroom, and that was the one thing Valerie wouldn't let go of. Right then, Gabrielle warned Valerie to tread carefully since she'd only just recovered, and Valerie nodded, agreed, and thanked her sister. Then the girls burst into the bathroom and froze. Everything was way bigger than they expected. Mina grinned and pointed out, "Look at this bathtub, it's huge." At that moment, Aisha snapped her head side to side and demanded, "Why am I even here?" She was still clocked in, and this whole place was packed wall to wall. Valerie spun toward Aisha and said she'd heard Aisha and Mr. Rita used to travel together. Then Aisha nodded, but panic tightened her whole face. Rana told herself it was fine if it was Ms. Gabriella, but then Valerie started calling Dad by his first name, and dread slammed into her gut. Valerie gushed that the bat felt amazing, and the moment lit her up. Rana agreed, but Aisha cut in mid-spark and demanded to know why Valerie had called them all, and Rana's stomach dropped as fear grabbed her while she tried to figure out why Aisha had singled her out. Valerie flashed a smile and said, "Yeah, I've got a reason." Then she pushed the girls, asking straight up about the red. Gabriella froze in shock and blurted, "So this is it." Valerie's cheeks flared as she nodded, swearing it was love at first sight, while Rana snapped with pure rage out of her mind. Rana marched up to Mrs. Valerie and declared, "I'm from the aristocracy," then immediately warned that she couldn't possibly fall for her commoner father. Valerie insisted everything was fine, and Gabriel promised it as a reward. Tita would even be ready to marry him, until the girl cut him off. Rana blurted out, voice shaky, that stories like this are everywhere. One woman falls for her healer, and then heartbreak comes for her like a storm. Mina snapped back to herself and blurted that it was the same situation, only now it was Rana in the middle. The girl sprang upright, fired off a question about which side Mina was on, and then flashed a sweet grin. "I'm on my dad's side." Valerie smirked and said, "It's all crystal clear now, so we don't regret anything later. Tell me everything about the red." Mina's blurted out fact 1, "Dad's incredibly kind." Then Aisha shot back fact 2, "Rida has always been kind, even if he was hard to trust back then, but now everyone's loving him and he's become really popular." Rana brought up fact 3, but admitted she had zero clue and maybe it was kind. Then Valerie shot back that once she heard that, she instantly wanted to be their mother. The girl shot her hand out and told her she was betting everything on Mina and Rana. Then Rana locked eyes with her and realized, with a jolt, that this girl was the kind who declares war. She clutched Valerie's hand like it was the last lifeline, insisting the girl was basically asking for trouble, and Valerie let out a shaky laugh, while Aisha sat there, wondering if she'd actually heard it all right. Reda strolled beside Mr. Tita, and when he spoke, he thanked the master for helping him finally cool down. Then Tita burst into laughter, bragging that he was proud of his scorching hot spring. Then the young man leaned in and demanded, "Are the girls still in that bathroom for real?" Tita snapped back, "Forget it, let's grab a drink for now." Red agreed. After a while, two girls finally showed up and called out that they were home, and Tata, Gabrielle, and Valerie lit up as they greeted them. Mom and Dad, too. Suddenly, the girls froze in shock. Valerie was really there. They bombarded her with questions about how she woke up and how she felt, and all the girl could say was, "Everything's okay now." Then the butler snapped his focus to the front and ordered the girls to welcome the guests first. They marched up to Red, Mina, and Rune. Then Oro Amert strutted in as the blonde setter, while Nero Amert stepped forward as the dark-haired setter. Tata leaned in and told Rida, "These are my daughters," then explained they planned to open a school this spring, and that they were here to test it out first. Rita gushed that she was thrilled to meet the girls, and Tide bragged that school was awesome. Then Gabrielle cut in, said they'd wrap up the hellos, and pushed everyone straight to dinner. After a while, everyone packed into a huge table, and Valerie shoved a plate toward Mr. Reed, urging him to taste the meat. He smiled and thanked her for worrying about him. Rana told him he couldn't live on meat alone, so he needed vegetables too, and the young guy nodded, agreed, and thanked Rana right away. Valerie leaned in and told Mr. Rada that dry food would choke up his throat, so he should wash it down with some wine. Then Rada quickly apologized to her. Then he stared at Mr. Tid and in his own head tried to piece together what the heck was going on, while Tid just stood there, totally clueless how it all spiraled like this. Mina said they get along like a dream. Then Valerie burst in, apologizing for interrupting dinner, saying she needed to talk to her brother, and Mr. Tata immediately asked Mina what happened. Valerie tells everyone that before she ties the knot, she wants to date Rita, so the girl marches straight to her brother and asks if he's got a problem with it. Retta froze, then snapped, "Wait, what are you talking about?" Right then, Rana sprang up and glared at her with pure fury, thinking about how Valerie had said what she wanted out loud, yet she refused to let her ruin the moment. Rana blushed and admitted to Valerie that Rida had already asked her, so was she really sure yet? Meanwhile, Rida panicked, grabbed Rana's attention, and swore he hadn't said any of that to propose. Valerie said she went for it precisely because her rival was so adorable, so she asked for permission. Mr. Titus said, "I'm not against it," but then Rida hit us with the real question. What does he actually think? Rida admitted he knows nothing about Valerie, and he snapped that he's hardly the best companion either, plus, he's over 30. Valerie broke down in tears, demanding what they were supposed to do after Mr. Retta rejected her, and Retta snapped back that wasn't what he meant. Then Rana insisted the boy belonged to her, but Retta roared, "No, Rana is my daughter." Mr. Tita cut in and "So then, why don't you two try being friends first?" He turns to Rita and demands her take. Retta shrugs, saying he's not against friendship at all, and honor, even. Rana then shuts it down with one simple line, "No need for that." Tita tells the boy to leave Valerie with him, and he nods without hesitation. Then Valerie suddenly remembers something. Gabriel whips around to the girl and demands to know what's wrong, and Valerie blurts out that she just had an idea. If Retta clicks with her, then her brother won't be stuck in loneliness anymore. He'll finally have a real friend too. Mr. Tito froze, looked shocked, and blurted out, "I'm not lonely." The next morning hit, and everyone spilled out of the house to thank Red for that visit, and that dinner they shared. Even the Amert kids leaned in and said goodbye to Mina, promising they'd see each other again. Rana watched them charge ahead, then she followed, because the moment she was alone, the curse started crawling around in her thoughts. Even among healers, ripping curses out of someone is crazy rare, so rare they call those specialists messengers from God. The spell hammers the caster with an insane amount of strain, and Rana has even heard the same rumor. The curses can be chased off in just a few days or dragged out over weeks. Even if they poured pure cruelty into it like blessings, it would still take them at least half a day, and in the absolute worst case, nothing would have changed at all. And there are those same fireballs she already saw when Red was casting a spell, so who is she, really? Right now, that question is whipping around in the girl's head. Mina whipped her head toward Rana and leaned in, because her sister looked like she was floating up in the clouds, and when Rana snapped back with a grin, she told Mina she finally understood how absolutely incredible their daddy was. Mina burst into cheering, lifted her hand a little, and with a huge grin she nodded along with her big sister, swearing their dad was something truly special. Rana pulled Mina into a tight hug, rubbed her head, and told her she was incredible too, so just like her father, Mina burst into loud laughter, while Rana just kept smiling, totally unshaken. Redo was warm and kind when he saved her. She never forgot that day, and it's no wonder Mrs. Valerie felt the same, because at dinner she couldn't stop shooting him obvious looks. 2 days later, once they were finally back home, a blonde girl popped up on the doorstep, Valerie. She flashed a grin and asked straight up if Mr. Redo was home yet. Rana clocked the girl in Valerie's visit the second she came in, and the whole room felt off balance. She snapped her head around, swallowed every emotion like fire, and demanded what Mrs. Valerie was doing here. Valerie's smile stretched even wider, and she lifted her hand to point off to the side. Then Mr. Tita burst in, bandaged hand raised, saying he'd been hurt just a little. They rushed into the master's room, and Redam managed to heal him on the spot. Then he demanded to know how Tita ended up like this, and the guy snapped back that he'd decided to teach those thugs who'd attacked the healer a lesson. Valerie spun in circles, scanning Red's room, while the healer, eyeing Tit in surprise, pushed them to say if they'd uncovered anything juicy about the bandits. The second Tata started talking, screams erupted from the first floor, an adult man shouting at the top of his lungs, demanding a doctor be brought to him right now, and doing it with zero shame. Redder felt it someone was out there pulling strings just to meet him, and the moment it hit, he started wondering what kind of guy would dare show up with manners so awful. Then he snapped his head toward Tita and told her he should go out. Red crept down the stairs, shouting for Riggs, and the healer demanded answers about what happened while he was treating Mr. Tid. Then, out of nowhere, something came flying straight for Red. The healer barely dodged. He ducked hard to the side as the glass with liquid flew past, splattered against the wall, then rained onto the floor. Rena stared ahead, completely stunned. A bunch of men blocked his way, and one guy was already yelling. He jabbed his finger at Red and demanded, "So you're really a healer?" Then he barked for the man to sprint over and fix him, right now. Redad demanded to know why he had to obey, and the insolent man's escort snapped at him to shut his mouth when he was talking to Munza. Munza LG runs the biggest trading empire, and he named it after his family. Then he stared at the healer like his life depended on it, sizing him up in an instant. That guy spun toward Munza and snapped that he was corrupt, and rage burned through Munza. He barked at Retta to start the treatment right now, no questions asked, no price mattered, and he was braced to suffer through any pain. Reno strode up to the man and told him they'd settle the payment later. Then the healer leaned in, desperate to see the wounds the merchant wanted treated, and Munza started to peel his cloak open. The man yanked off his outer clothes and flung them aside. Every inch of his body underneath was peppered with black spots, but his head, shoulders, and neck stayed untouched, and Redith swore those marks looked like burns. Munza kept barreling at the healer, and he even claimed that 2 healer guilds back before they came here had already examined him. Then, right after, he sneered that in this city the healers are downright incompetent. He could only pray Rita would hold up, because the healers swore those burns happened just a couple of days ago, right in the evening, and the merchant's assistant confirmed it too. Everything hit them like lightning. Then the assistant shot out, asking if Rhonda could help his master, and Rhonda went deadly silent, staring off like he finally got why Munza was left with those wounds. Ray started to recall a theory he'd drilled from books years ago, the exact way the Chris removal spell was supposed to work, if it had ever been cast right. Rita snapped her gaze to the trading company's owner and declared that these curses were engineered to crawl right back to the caster the moment they were dispelled. Munza stared up in pure shock. The assistant snapped and yelled that Redo was acting with zero respect, like the healer had no right to carry on that way, and was even mocking their boss. Then, out of nowhere, the girl's voice cut in.